gentlemen, welcome to the program. I'm your host, Chris George Zuger, and to my right is Mr. Monoatomic himself, Big Sexy Alex. Welcome to the Den of Lore. Grab yourselves your glasses of scotch and pull your chair up to the fire, because we are going to learn some really cool shit tonight. And I know that this is a guest that Alex has wanted to have on this show for a very long time. We've got Spencer Cross on the program with us, and we are going to be talking about the Great Pyramid as a factory for monoatomic gold. And this means that Alex can ask the monoatomic gold question, and he may actually get an answer this time.
Fantastic. I can't wait.
I'm absolutely thrilled to be doing this program for you ladies and gentlemen every single week. Please do follow us on Twitter at Den of Lore, and also do check out our new Patreon, which we do have at patreon.com/Den of Lore if you'd like to support the show. It always means a lot when I do hear and get letters from our fans. Again, it's the love that which is why we do this, or at least why I do this, in addition to an excuse to drink scotch on a Friday night, I guess. But most importantly, if you want to be able to see more of the show, because I'd like to start doing this show more than once a week, again, check out patreon.com/Den of Lore and choose a monthly support level. Every single bit helps. And, there are tons of perks, and more will be added as the time goes on. Now, I think Alex is. How is the laptop work?
The laptop is good. I'm excited. This is going to touch on science, technology, philosophy, ancient history, all simultaneously.
That's fantastic.
It's the quintessential Den of Lore.
The quintessential Den of Lore. And speaking of the Den of Lore, this is our 26th episode. That's half a year.
Amazing.
That is amazing. I know when we first started this show back in end of September.
Who knew we would get this far?
Well, I thought you'd probably definitely kill me just by having to put up with me for an extended period of time every Friday. But still, it's
Nobody shut us down. We're not wearing tinfoil hats yet.
Oh, not yet. No. Well, that's the thing. The higher side chats, they take care of the conspiracy. We take care of the ancient mysteries. Politics and conspiracy is all well and good. It's nice to know what's going on, but at the same time, it's just so goddamn depressing. It's like, yes, the world's fucked up. We know about it. I want to know about conspiracies in 2000 BC. I want to hear about what the Egyptians had to deal with, or what type of court intrigue they had.
Revolutionary catalysts.
Exactly.
Things that are going to change the future.
Exactly.
Let's talk about that.
Now, I know with today's opening segment, we normally have Denver Michaels on, but it's been a while since I've actually talked to Alex. I know. Alex just got married not too long ago. How did that go? How was the how are things? How was Costa Rica?
Costa Rica was amazing. I've got a bunch of high-def video I'll share with you after the show. We did lots of excursions. We just eloped, so we did our own little private ceremony, which was very, very nice.
You eloped?
Yeah. Kept it simple.
Well, that's...
Weddings are expensive.
Oh, God. As a married man myself...
So are honeymoons, yeah.
Yes, they are. They can be incredibly expensive. Spencer, I know you're on the line with us. You're a married man, are you?
Yes, sir, and I just want to be the first to say congratulations. That is a major feat. Welcome to the rest of your life, Alex. That's really cool. Yeah, I've been married 13 years and going on 14 now, and there's a lot of give and take, but I got to tell you, it is the most wonderful thing in the world to share every second of your life with someone and be able to bounce stuff off of them like what you guys are about to hear. All I heard was, oh, that's silly. That's ridiculous. So I was able to hone it a little bit. So you guys get to hear the polished product.
Well, that's fantastic. And at least you're the first to tell him on this show. Well, again, he says he gets married. I just keep
the ladies have to be able to put up with a bit of ridiculous.
I will agree. It is expensive getting married, so I'm a little jealous that you decided to elope. We're still trying to get over the cost of that.
How long have you guys been married?
13 years, going on 14 next month.
Wow, congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Any advice to somebody who got married last year?
Definitely listen as much as you can. Do not open your mouth, no matter what she says. If she says, I need to hear your opinion, do not answer. Just say, honey, that sounds great.
And invest in passive monatomic gold production.
Yeah.
Driven by,
and then do that on the side.
Yeah. Driven by ancient monuments and cosmological alignments.
That's the secret to a happy marriage right there.
It's an ancient dowry. The pyramids.
Well, I do thank you very much, for bringing me on the show. This is going to be pretty cool because I've been wanting to give out an update on this subject since November, and this is going to be a real treat for your audience. I think this is unique.
I got a ton of questions for you. If you want me to start firing off some, or
Well,
did you want to start somewhere?
Well, we have to do the opening segment first.
Oh.
Well, we're still kind of in the opening segments, and again, a lot of the times we've done opening segments like, "What did we learn today?" And I came up with this crazy idea where it's like, I'm just gonna find somebody on my Skype contact list, and I'm gonna call them and see how they're doing. just to be able to add that little bit of unpredictability. And Alex is shaking his head at me right now, but he does that a lot.
We had a formula, Chris.
we
didn't cast the formula into a pyramid, but we had a formula.
Now, okay, let's see who I've got here. I know. I did randomly tell somebody that we were going to possibly do this. So I'm just gonna give this person a call and see if they actually pick up. See, I've got a mobile number for them here, so we'll see if they answer.
This is a contrived randomness, I'm sure.
Well, it's
planned random.
Okay, well, let's let me see here if there's anybody else actually online with Skype. Give me a second here. Okay. I know exactly. You know what?
It's getting to be quite the Skype list.
Well, yeah, I know. All right.
Should I make the Skype noises?
Sorry about that.
I'm back.
All right, let me just see here. That was my mistake. I'm going to add this person. Because I forgot to add people. Let's give Scotty Roberts a call and see how he's doing. See if he picks up.
Hi, this is Scotty Roberts of Intrepid Paradigm. At the tone, leave your message. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
The formula, Chris. Hi,
At the tone, please record your message. When you finish recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Go for it.
Hey, Scotty, it's Chris and Alex from the Den of Lore, hoping to drag you into a conversation about monatomic gold in ancient history. Please get back to us on Skype as soon as you get our message.
Yeah, it would be fantastic to be able to hear from you, buddy. I hope you're doing well.
I don't know if we'll repeat that, but
unfortunately not. Well, that didn't. Again, it's usually better when they actually, when they actually call you back or at least answer the phone. But it's the first time we've actually done this. And unfortunately, I also
and I'm back.
And apparently, I don't know how to use Skype, so I do apologize for that. Now.
So I'm ready to jump in with a whole bunch of questions for our author and for the benefit of reviewing.
Well, we try the opening segment. If it doesn't work, then it's
you gotta have the creativity to mix things up. No question there.
Now, there's also a possibility that we're recording a very long message on Scotty's answering machine, so this will be fantastic.
3-hour long conversation about monatomics on his answering machine. Beautiful.
So, if you wanted to share your screen with me again, I can get the whole thing going.
Okay, we're gonna jump right into the update.
We're gonna jump right into the update, and I could see the YouTube chat is filling up. I don't know if you're in the YouTube chat or not. Do you want to get?
I'm trying to keep my computer from crashing, so I'm gonna try to keep it separated.
Now,
Let's see here.
One interesting thing, and actually, before we get into it, I did want to give a very big shout out to Laird Scranton. It's his birthday on Sunday, And I said, I was talking to him earlier, and I said, Laird? He's like, yes, Chris. I know you're turning 64. I'm going to give you a shout out on the show. He's a very good friend of the show, and I know he's nearing retirement, and he's looking towards that golden time where he can rest and spend a lot of time on Facebook. And I'm guessing if he's like me, then taking a lot of cat photos and videos in. So, but Laird, happy birthday to you. Unfortunately, I don't have the voice to sing happy birthday, and maybe Alex can give you a good rendition if you're listening. Alex is shaking his head. No, he's not going to sing. Now, let me just get the. I can actually close that. Nice. All right. Share screen now. I'm sharing the screen right now, and the Great Pyramid, a factory for monoatomic gold. I know Alex has a lot of questions. He's been jotting them down ever since we starting up for tonight. So I'm going to let him take it away, and I will provide color commentary.
All conspiracy paths lead to monoatomic gold. It's the most exciting thing ever.
All right. Well, I am excited to hear some of Alex's questions.
I guess Lawrence Gardner is what got a lot of people on the subject of monoatomic gold and Mufkut and Ormus, and there's a lot of different names for this stuff. You've had a chance to play with some chemistry, of course. I was going to ask you if there's some upcoming Inoda stuff if you're going to get involved with. Your thoughts on Flinders Petrie, on some of the history of people going through the pyramids and looking at Mount Serabit as a potential source of a monoatomic gold factory of the ancient Egyptians, evidence of salts inside the pyramids. Do you want to touch on any of that stuff? Antigravitics and superconductivity of monoatomic gold. Sort of like a beautiful thing because you've sort of got an evidence for an otherworldly substance, potentially, if it's made correctly. Then there should be all kinds of this stuff laying around, especially if it was made en masse.
Well, what I have discovered after going through Lawrence Gardner's his discoveries and what his theories are, and going through David Hudson's work, is that when they were able to apply lots of heat and plasma energy and electric energy, they were able to produce some of these effects where you would see where it was either affected by magnets or not affected by magnets. It would lock up a scale to where if you lifted the scale up, it would push the scale down. If you dropped the scale, it would grab the scale and pull it up, so that it would just lock into gravity and not be affected at all. And you hit on a lot of topics there. I'm not going to be the right person to be the Lawrence Gardner expert. I'm more of the chemistry aspect, so we can definitely walk through some of that. But the effects that one gets when they take monoatomic gold is going to be all over the map.
Yeah, we should have one column for sort of a biological impact, and then engineering possibilities.
I think there's a dual. Yeah, I think there's dual possibilities. I think you can have a technological use for this product, and then you can have a medicinal use for the product. And for me personally, if you can kind of go back, I'm not going to recap the entire two or three other shows that I've done regarding my health issues, but for me personally, my journey has been on the medical side at the beginning, and then as I've taken it since then over the last few years, because it hasn't been a few years now. It seems like yesterday when this first kicked off, but it has been a few years, and now it's been much more of a spiritual journey. And what I'm gathering from my experience now is I'm going to hit the nail on the head as short and sweet as I possibly can, and then we can kind of move on to whatever topic or which path you want to go down, because this is going to open up kind of Pandora's box. And that is, for me, ever since the health issues have been solved, it seems like it's more of a placebo amplifier. So you can have thoughts of positive nature, you can have thoughts of negative nature, you can have healing thoughts, you can have unhealthy thoughts, but whatever you have going on in your heart and your mind, it seems that monoatomic gold that amplifies it tremendously.
Yeah, we heard Don Nance talk about that in some of the All the Gold You Can Eat documentary.
I would totally agree with that. That's something that really resonates with me, and it's really hit home with me on several occasions. I really wanted to be cured of my ulcerative colitis because that's how it started for me. And first I started out with turmeric. After the prescription, I had a really expensive prescription. Ended up being upwards of $900 a month for my Asocol. And that was subsiding and suppressing my symptoms, but it was not healing me. So I tried to find things that would heal. I did research, and I found that turmeric was a really good anti-inflammatory, which is ulcerative colitis essentially is an anti-inflammatory. And turmeric was helping, and then I had to take more and more and more to try to get it to completely subside. And come to find out, it had to be an extract for it to really work really well. And by the time I was getting down the path of complete healing, it was getting to be close to the same price as the original prescription. So that I did further research into what also could be a possible anti-inflammatory. And that's where I stumbled onto monoatomic gold. And
one of the neat things on the monoatomic is it should be relatively good empirical evidence. I know a lot of the forums and websites online, they talk about monoatomic, like rhodiniums or coppers and all kinds of different metals, but there should be some really interesting, credible scientific organizations studying this. If there is superconductive properties, there's got to be some current medical advances or physics departments of universities looking at this stuff. And just, you see there's a lot of quackery on the internet, of course, but there's got to be some hardcore scientific people looking at this stuff.
You, Alex. I would agree that there should be. And the issue that we're running into here is two things. When was the last time you heard of David Hudson?
About a year ago.
He seems to have disappeared.
Yep.
And then the last thing that I heard was that he was contacted by someone that was trying to invest a large amount of money for coming out of Europe that was going to use it for HIV study. And ever since that announcement was made, I haven't heard a thing. So my question is okay, if that's really going on, then why are these studies dropping off the scope the very moment that they're being announced?
And my argument to CRISPR and stuff too, that's supposed to get rid of the HIV. That's sort of jumping around the internet here on topics, but you've heard of the CRISPR technology where they do like the gene editing and stuff?
Not the CRISPR, so much? No.
Okay, that's to be looked at another day, perhaps. But
now, one of the things at least I've heard about monoatomic gold, and this goes back to the whole Anunnaki ancient aliens thing. Yes, I know that it was being excavated by the Anunnaki when they first came here to essentially extend their lives and to ensure proper, good, long health. Now, whether that is something that is considered more of a fable or like a parable to be used as an example, to at least get people into the idea of using it, from ancient times, or it's something that's, just made up from the ancient alien side, that's kind of been the reoccurring theme from any story that carries it. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the source is, which is a possibility you might be able to shed some light on.
Well, just like if you're going to combine superconductivity with bioelectric systems, there's no current expert on that. That's sort of it's a weird combination of things.
Well, okay, let's back up a little bit to part of Alex's question when he was talking about rhodium and iridium. So if we discuss some of the precursors to the experience and my discovery into it, the next stage after the turmeric was something called bentonite or Ethereum gold that has a naturally mined earth substance that's kind of like clay, and it has other minerals mixed in with it that would be a monatomic nature, like rhodium, iridium, copper, gold, silver. All of those were found in this. And that cocktail is what it is. It's a cocktail, but it's not narrowing down the individual element, which is what I think that Alex is talking about, that he wants to try to pinpoint. He wants to figure out what is it that gold is doing, not this whole cocktail of things. So that's why the next logical step after the Ethereum gold clay is to take the gold out and try to precipitate that by itself as a monoatomic or nanoparticle and see what that can do. And I'm guessing that's what, Alex, is that what you're saying that you're mostly curious about, is isolating the gold by itself?
Yeah, so I mean, if you follow Lawrence Gardner's work through, and David Hudson and the Flinders Petrie stuff, and I've tumbled down those rabbit holes trying to connect those dots for a while, but at the end of it, you say, well, theoretically, I should be able to get gold. I should be able to complete this chemical process on it. You get it, hitting it up and down with a pH, and you'd have a monoatomic gold. You should theoretically be able to pass it through sort of, let's call it the Dave Hudson criteria, where put it in a vacuum where you get it heated up so that it disappears out of the visible light spectrum. Because it's superconducting, it comes back when it cools down. Okay, anything that didn't disappear is an impurity. And at that point you say, okay, now I've got some radical, some foreign material here that I can experiment with. And why should it stop there? Why is there no video record of that experiment? Is David Hudson full of, BS, or where's the video record of that? Why do we just have data? Can we not look at the mass spectronomy, under a camera? Like, that should be shared with the world, if that's the case. And if it does have a phase change effect where it disappears from visible light spectrum, that should be the bar for quality of material. And if the Ark of the Covenant runs down that path, and if the pyramids run down that path, and the Ark of the Covenant fits into the pyramid, and all these other interesting notions that all these authors are coming forward with on the internet, then and the Ark of the Covenant's filled with monoatomic gold, and that's why it had these weird weight characteristics, then a lot of it points at that like phase change of the substance. We should be able to catch that on video of it disappearing. Why does that not exist?
Again, that goes back to funding. Who is willing to step forward and pay for this funding? Because I certainly don't have the kind of money that it takes to go through this testing. And if David Hudson did it,
he can afford a $500 GoPro, right?
I'm sorry?
If David Hudson's a multimillionaire farmer and he has this, he can afford a $400 GoPro to film this for the world.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, the GoPro is going to be one aspect of it, but getting access to the lab, like he says he had, that's the other aspect. Are they going to let you film when you go in there? Who owns the lab? Do they have a bias? What is their opinion of this scientific experiment? All of these issues have to be taken into consideration. It's not just me waving money around and saying, okay, here's $20,000. Let's go get access to the ASU lab, and we're going to run all these tests. Do you mind if I film? Well, you still have to go through the dean. You still have to go through all of the professors that are going to be involved. What are their opinions of it? Everyone's going to have a little bit of a scientific bias that you have to go through in order to get in the door.
I'd skip them and go guerrilla. Just, okay, I'm going to sneak in a tiny camera. Like, talking something that could change the face of human history. how can you not take that step? How can you care about people's opinions when you have something so radical in front of you?
Get me in the door, and I'll do it.
That's the frustration when you're connecting these dots, and there's still those missing pieces.
Yeah, you first have to bend the ear of the professors and the deans to get them interested in the subject, and then you can go present it and then run through the process. Let me have access to your lab.
I'd skip the academics entirely and say, well, look, if it's just temperature, I can get my hands on gold. I can get my hands on a chemistry set. I could procure my own monatomics. I could heat them to whatever temperature David Hudson does in his lectures, 250 degrees Celsius, something like that, and I could film that myself.
Yeah, but I'm $4,000 into it with materials and equipment, and I still haven't been able to procure that equipment. So, we can work together.
Sorry if I'm ranting here. It's just that's where my mind goes on the subject immediately.
That part of it is just as frustrating to me as it is to you, believe me. And honestly, that's part of the reason why I wanted to go public with a lot of this, is because I'm saying, where are you guys? Why can't we collaborate? I've reached out to him. I've found him on a couple of forums a few years ago and reached out to him, and he dropped off the scope. I would like for all these guys to come out of the woodwork and say, let's work on this together. And so far, some of my best collaborators have been the students of my program, where they've gone through the process, they've made it, and they go one little step further. I have one who is making a 3D scale model of the pyramid, and we're collaborating on that and showing how the pyramid could make it as if it was its own chemistry set. Those kind of things, with the hearts and the minds of the people who are really, really interested in this subject in a grassroots manner, is kind of how it's going to have to work. I think that it's gone are the days where I can walk into a large university, gain access to very expensive lab equipment, and convince them to allow me to go through this process, or convince them to do it themselves. What do they see? This is, we're in the den of lore. This is considered ancient lore. What is in it for them to go out on a limb and risk their tenure to go down this rabbit hole? I don't blame them for not trying this. I blame me. I blame listeners. I blame all the people who are interested in this subject for not taking it the next step themselves. We have to come together as a grassroots effort and deal with this on our own. We don't need leadership. We just need ourselves to do it. Why aren't we doing it?
I agree with you entirely there.
Now, isn't it also like, because monoatomic gold is such a kind of a secretive thing, and it has the properties that apparently are so out of this world, that if somebody has the ability to be able to make it, they're going to guard that secret pretty closely, because who knows what kind of nefarious forces are out there that are like, oh, this person can do this. They're an alchemist. We need to like take them out. So, that's kind of the at least the only thing I could see from some people out there.
You'd hire them unless you're nuts.
Well, yeah, but
oh no, the whole world will get enlightened. Well, it's the most ridiculous notion ever.
Or you can do it the way I'm doing it and hide it in plain sight. That's what I've been doing. Well, I've been sharing it with as many people as I can, and it's hiding very, very well right now.
If the pyramid was a monatomic gold factory, then they'd say, well, okay, what were they going to do with that gigantic amassment of it? And how does that echo what Flinges Petrie apparently found at Mount Cerebit if you're following the Lawrence Gardner path? And then you'd say, well, okay, if they were going to build a pyramid, maybe they said, well, okay, I can't hoard all the monatomic gold for myself and be some super enlightened being. And there's that Ayn Rand line, you're better to be a peon amongst angels than a king amongst barbarians, sociologically speaking, in terms of the society that you'd want to live in. So you'd say, well, okay, let's make enough monatomic gold for everybody. No problem. The whole world gets together. They build a pyramid to do it. That's what makes your book and theories sort of intriguing. It's just, what would they do if they had that much of it?
Well, they would sit back and laugh at us as to how long it took us to figure out how it worked.
I know modern physicists now are trying to filter out trace amounts of uranium and plutonium stuff from ocean water, which is sort of, I see as a little bit of a parallel to some of your theories on how they were trying to use the pyramid as a chemical factory.
Yeah, it would be nice if they could get some of this plutonium and uranium out right now under the Fukushima issue. But yeah, I mean, I think that if they were smart enough to figure out how to make a lab encased in 2 million blocks of limestone, then they're sitting back and laughing at us from above saying, oh man, look how long it took for them to figure this out. We tried to give them as many hints as they possibly can. Hey, look, this is a monolith that's sticking out in the middle of the desert, and it should be very, very interesting to you. Let's see if you can figure out what it is. And it's taken till this long. Chris Dunn did a beautiful job of outlining how it could be a machine. John Cadman, I'm not sure if you are aware of or heard that name before, but John Cadman is the one that came up with the idea that the structure of the tunnels, passageways, and chambers are designed to be a pump, and they're able to move the water around. And so the pump was driving Christopher Dunn's machine. Well, then I take it one step further and say, we're using power, just like Christopher Dunn is saying, we're using electricity, we're using power, we're using John Cadman's pump, and we're moving this fluid around the pyramid. It's very complicated, yet beautifully simple once you backtrack it and you understand what the end product is. Then you kind of back your way into, okay, if that's the case, then is it making it? Yes. If so, okay, then how? And it does all of those things. It is really one of the most amazing things. It probably is the most amazing thing that humanity could be faced with right now, is discovering how this thing could have worked. And for us to take this long to figure it out is truly amazing. But here we are, and we're discussing it now.
Now, how did you first come up with the with the? I'm going to refer to your work as the great work. From going forward, it just makes it's a lot shorter than the Great Pyramid Factory from Monoatomic Gold, so I'm just going to refer to it as the great work for the rest of the show.
It's hard to be humbled that way, but okay.
Now, how did you first come up with your theory for the great work?
Well, we will have to touch on a little bit of some esoteric topics here, but inspiration comes in many forms, I guess. And I was going through kind of a tough time professionally. I was a real estate investor, and things weren't going very well, and I was starting to get ill and coming down with ulcerative colitis, and things were getting really tough physically and professionally. And I awoke with a dream, vision, whatever somebody wants to call it, of having a memory of being a knowledgeable entity a very, very long time ago that had knowledge of the future and knowledge of the past, and made an imprint on me of a really, really powerful memory, as if it was more powerful than how I would remember this show tomorrow morning. So that made an imprint. Then a few months later, I am waking up and I have another imprint that comes in, and it's starting to show me memories of ancient Egypt. I see a doorway, and then I hear the words Hathor and Met. So I'm thinking, okay, well, what is that? And I do some research, and I find out that it's, we're talking about the Temple of Hathor and Mot. And then that imprint goes forward a little bit further into the future, a couple more months down the road, and I'm doing my research into how to heal and what I should try. And when I finally get to monoatomic gold, it was like I had this huge download of packets of data that were in like zip files just shoved into my head. And it was basically along the lines of, you found it. This is going to help you. Oh, okay. So all I knew is that I got some information that was kind of in a zip file. I was having some trouble opening it. But then I did research and more research and followed that rabbit hole into monoatomic gold, white powder gold, whatever you want to call it, Ormus. Went in many different directions. And when I stumbled on Lawrence Gardner's work, and he was talking about the Great Pyramid making white powder gold, but he was saying that the Ark of the Covenant fit into the coffer, as Alex was discussing earlier, and that it had white powder gold in it. That didn't exactly resonate with me, but I could see how those were possibilities. And I went down that route. I said, okay, if the Great Pyramid, if he's right, and the Great Pyramid was making monoatomic gold, I'm going to figure out how it did it. And so I went through the steps of looking up the same videos that you guys probably ran into, where there's this guy in Belgium that was showing people on YouTube. It's about a 15-minute video that shows you how he makes monoatomic gold. And I could tell that was really close. Like he was really getting there. And I tried to look into how to do that myself, and I went through that process, made a whole bunch of mistakes, spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on mistakes on that type of method. Then I went into did some more research on it, and finally stumbled on a forum, an Ormus forum, where I found Don Nance's recipe, which I credit, and that's a recipe that you can find for free. Well, not for free, but it's in the book. If you get the book, that recipe is in there that Don Nance used, and that's the one that I started with, where I was finally successful to get to the white solution. Now, I didn't have the lab equipment, as Alex is bringing up, to use plasma and heat to get it to a high enough temperature to test it to take it to the next stage. But after reading Don Nance's work, I noticed that he was able to have some positive benefits just with the recipe that he was using, and he didn't take it that next step that David Hudson claims that he did. So I went that route, and it started to work, and I could tell that was working. Something was different. And once I figured out that was a possibility, that was the path to go down, and it was creating a white solution or a white precipitate, then I tried to figure out, okay, could the pyramid do that? And that specific process I found was possible, but I wanted to take it a step further and see if I could figure out, okay, is it possible to make all the chemicals that are needed inside the pyramid? And that's where things got really interesting, because not only is it possible in some of the later stages of this process for the pyramid to make monoatomic gold on its own, but it also can make the necessary chemicals, the raw materials needed to break apart the gold into smaller and smaller pieces. So that's when I looked up, okay, well, how do you make sodium hydroxide? Because that's one of the chemicals that you need. How do you make hydrochloric acid? Because that's one of the chemicals that you need. And I was able to find those processes. I ran them past, I knew a professional chemical engineer, ran it past that person, and at every step of the way they said, yes, that is how we would make it. That's true. That would work. And after going through all of the different steps, I laid it out, backed my way into the original process, and found that yes, each one of those chemicals can be made theoretically with a couple of missing pieces, and we're going to talk about one of those updates while we're on the show today, hopefully. And yes, you can find each one of those processes in there. So that's how it started. And after sharing that idea with some audiences, it's gone down an interesting path. I've had a lot of inquiries into where can I buy it, and I can't, at the time I could not answer that question because, like you, I don't know who's really doing the correct process, because I didn't know if they would share that process with me. And I reached out to several people to see if they could match it with mine, and I didn't get any responses. Nobody wanted to share that. Like you said, once you figure this out, if you think you figured it out, you don't want to share with anybody. But I was taking it a different route. I wanted to share with people.
Philosophically, you'd say, well, okay, if you'd follow the Don Nance's philosophy on that, it's going to amplify whatever's in the mind or the heart of the person that would take that, the amplified placebo effect, or the secret on steroids or what have you. And there's a lot of people that would not be ready for that, but that they're also the kind of people that probably wouldn't be coming anywhere close to that research.
That's a good point.
But that's a good point. All those people on the forums looking at this stuff, connecting the dots and saying, well, how do I know if I'm going to get a good product out of this? And to that, I'd say, well, the standard would be, does it phase change under intense heat, as per the David Hudson experiment? And if it's not, then, back to the drawing board, or filter out what doesn't phase change, or, that part seems relatively simple. It's not that hard to hard to heat things up, right?
Yeah, I mean, and again, that you can do it that way on the technology side, or you can go the route of the medical side and see how it affects the person.
I wouldn't give somebody any product like that until it's past that phase change test. You'd say, well, okay, that's an otherworldly material. It just disappeared, vanished from sight, and came back. That's unbelievable. That's remarkable. That requires that level of evidence for you to ingest a strange substance with no testing or background. And even then, you probably shouldn't ingest it, But if you had that, that should be filmable. That's like, hey, I've got a chemical process that'll let you see UFOs. Like, it's on par with that.
Well, even if it does go through that process that you're describing of phase changing, why would that entice? Why would somebody want to ingest it after seeing that? It's just another level of evidence that you would be looking for that you want to see, but it doesn't mean that everybody needs to see that specific piece of evidence in order to feel good.
Yeah, I'd say that's the bar for knowing that it's a legit what people were talking about.
Well, I would like to have that equipment. That would be nice. I wouldn't mind testing that. That would be nice.
Cool. Let's do it.
I'm on board.
Do you want to jump slides here? Get into the pyramid, and I imagine they've got must have some interesting volumes and calculations and illustrations and stuff to show with our audience.
Yeah, and feel free to contact me. My email is right here on this slide, author@pyramidfactory.net, if you have any questions or you want to collaborate or discuss anything. So if you can go to this slide here, and this is going to be step 1. You can also, if you have the book, you can follow along. It's on page 30. And this is where we can discuss the technological aspect. See, this is what I thought that Alex's technological interest would be, and I didn't realize that he would be grilling me on my knowledge of chemistry, which I don't have a whole lot of. But we can go through this technical aspect of it from here.
Now, I know that Grimsteak in the YouTube chat is asking if it's only the Great Pyramid that was a factor for monoatomic gold, or if there were others.
I had mentioned Mount Cerebit, if you follow the Lawrence Gardner's work too. But that's maybe something they were doing to further refine it. That's another interesting aside in that rabbit hole. But
that's something that I think that would be the next step after what you'll see. You'll see in step 4 that what we get to in step 4 is ready for another stage, and it would possibly be for cooking. So the pyramid I have not found anything in there that would create an oven atmosphere, but maybe Cerebit was. That could be a possibility too.
Not a lot of wood around there to burn to make enough heat for filtration, for a chemical filtration on that process. And I don't mean to grill you at all, Spencer. Just my frustration with those dots and lines connecting the rabbit hole pieces.
Well, we're only dealing with one of the greatest mysteries known to man, so we're all kind of frustrated.
I'm very happy to have you with us tonight.
I'm happy to be here. All right, so we can take a look at slide number 1, and it's in page 30. This is going to be a better picture than you'll find in the book because of, funding issues. I had to do some pretty low quality pictures in there, but there's plenty of stuff on the internet that you can find that will be way better quality slides than what you can find in there, but this one is a good example. So we'll start with A, and with A, we can take salt down to the pit area, down the descending corridor, and then add Nile water, because we can assume there are lots of theorists that state that there was a retaining wall that surrounded the pyramid that could raise the water level, and that's what I'm basing it on, that idea that yes, we have access to Nile water, and we can bring that water either manually up to send down the descending corridor, or we can allow it to flow on its own down the descending corridor. So we're going to take salt and water down the descending corridor passageway down to the subterranean pit. And then we're going to take a look at C, and we're going to agitate that salt in water until it's dissolved. Now, how does the salt and water agitate? Well, if you look at John Cadman's theory that the Great Pyramid was a ram pump, now he was saying that it could have been used as a source of water, like a water tower that would send it up.
Maybe an impeller?
Well, impeller, yes, but the ram pump specifically is the best way to make this work, because you're going to use rhythm and clicking, and you're going to actually either hold it inside that subterranean pit, or you can send it to another area. And this ram pump using gravity and rhythm is a really good way to do that. So John Cadman's theory of this being a ram, go ahead.
He's actually in YouTube chat with us. He just said,
that's awesome.
Retaining wall is confirmed fact.
Sweet. Well, hi, John. I haven't heard from you in a while, but he and I did speak through email not too long ago. I guess it was about a year ago, and I'm just so glad that he was able to come up with this work, because this is an essential piece. So the ram pump, once it's activated, can actually be used in a couple different ways. If you watch some of John's videos, what you'll see is that it can actually have a rhythmic pattern, and you can agitate the salt and water there without having to send it anywhere right away. But once you activate certain parts of it to send it to another area through narrowing passageways and airways, as Zahi Hawass would like to call them, airways, then we go from C on the slide, now we go to D, and we can send this solution, this saltwater solution, up the pyramid and let it fall down the air shaft going into the King's Chamber, which is in E. And once it's in the King's Chamber, then you say, okay, if it's in the King's Chamber, what am I using this salt water for? This is where we start we have to go kind of backwards in making this solution. And what we're making with this salt water is sodium hydroxide. And doing some research on how to make sodium hydroxide, what I discovered is that you need salt water and you need electrolysis. So we already have salt water in there. How are we going to get electrolysis? So what we learned through the Gantenbrink discovery is that there's a door quite a ways up the King's Chamber shaft. And at the end of that shaft, this door has what looks to be two metal rods or electrodes. And what they ended up doing was they drilled through to see what was on the other side, and those electrodes go all the way through. And it looks like there's a big empty chamber there, and what it could be is a holding area. So if the if we assume that we can send fluid up using the ram pump from the subterranean pit and get to that air shaft, then it starts to build up behind the gantry brink door and slowly drip down until it reaches the king's chamber. Originally, the king's chamber that was sealed off where the air shaft was, so it would be able to hold a little bit of pressure, and some seepage would come out and eventually fill up that chamber.
Do you know if anybody's calculated the interior volume of those spaces roughly? I know it's a big building. Some like a theorized volume or something.
Well, they had to use an orthoscopic camera to guess how big it is, and it's not known. It's not a known entity yet. They haven't been able to measure it, so they have to use a visual guess. And
I've heard that some of those shafts are something like 8 inches by 8 inches, and they're trying to send little drone cameras into them now. And
the shafts, yeah, those are knowns. You know that those are 8 by 8. But on the other side of the gantry brink door, I thought that's what you were wondering about. That we don't know exactly how big that cavity is.
Now, are there any...
Send in the drones.
Are there any acoustics that are involved in this process? I know that there's someone in YouTube chat who understands understands the water portion of it, but the acoustics actually that I think that's a pretty good point if it is.
We were watching, what was it, Magical Egypt with I think John Anthony West, and some people singing and stuff in the King's Chamber, trying to get the resonant effect in there.
Yeah, I am aware that's available. That effect is available. And I cannot rule out that has a use, but I don't know what that use would be. It would be total speculation as to how. I know that frequency and thought is going to be important in the making of this and the end product and your use of it, but I don't know how sound would affect it. That would require, again, some serious funding to try to go down that path.
Yeah, there's not a lot of songs in the alchemical notebooks.
Right. I don't sing a whole lot, but
you don't want to hear me sing.
Yeah. We can sing "Happy Birthday."
Oh, Alex is very good at that. He puts in quite the rendition.
Maybe we'll do the Laird Scranton "Happy Birthday" song at the end.
Yeah, the Laird Scranton "Happy Birthday" is important, and in fact, my kids came back with a pretty funny "Happy Birthday" song. It was, "This is your birthday song. It isn't very long. Hey," so that's my best song. That's what I know. So
our local radio station actually uses that as their birthday song for whenever they announce birthdays in the morning. It's
cosmologically aligned star mounds to you. something like that, Laird.
That would work perfectly for Laird. That's fitting. That's very fitting.
I know.
Okay.
Now, I just before we move on to the next slide, I do see, and I'm going to point out here, which you have the extension to F, which then again goes back down towards the subterranean chamber. Now, F is a relatively new discovery, and I know that we've had during episode 22 we had Edward Nightingale, who had discussed a little bit about the discovery of that particular chamber. I'm not sure if this is something that you wanted to go into now or later on, but
okay. We'll go into the conclusion definitely in a couple slides down the road, but this picture right here, this was my original slide that I put together in 2013. So this was just me saying, if this is going on and we are making sodium hydroxide, then the waste is going to be chlorine gas, and we need to store it somewhere. And this is kind of where I think is the most logical place to store it. It's the easiest and most effective place to store it for later use. That's why I put that there. So this actually has nothing to do with the new discovery that we're going to be discussing when I originally came up with this, but it does fit.
You definitely have to send in a robot to look for that one.
You think we would? Yes, we would. That'd be awesome. All right, so in this slide we have created sodium hydroxide. It's sitting in the King's chamber. and now it's being stored in this yet to be discovered void F. Okay? Now we can move on to step 2. Now this is on page 31 in my book if you're following, and this is the better version of it that we're looking on the slide. So now, again, we've got chlorine gas sitting in B. We've got the sodium hydroxide sitting in the King's chamber. But what other chemicals do we need to make monoatomic gold or white powder gold? We need hydrochloric acid. So how do we make that? Okay. Again, we use water from the Nile. We're going to add that on A on the right side of the slide. That's going to fall down the descending passageway to the subterranean chamber. And then what I confirmed with my contact, that is the chemical engineer, what we can do is we can percolate the chlorine gas coming up from the bottom, and that percolation under pressure actually does turn the water into hydrochloric acid just using the chlorine gas. So that spends some time down there percolating. We've got our hydrochloric acid. Then what are we going to do with it? We're going to look at C. We're going to send it up through the shaft that then goes to the Queen's chamber, and it's going to fall and fill up the Queen's chamber. Now, let's back up to the King's chamber. You know, everybody's like, well, okay, well, how does it stay in the King's chamber? What has baffles? That's what those 3 lines are there. I just wanted to point that out. I recognize that before we move on. So now the chlorine gas has been pumped using the ram pump again. This time it's selected the Queen's chamber, and now we have sodium hydroxide in the King's chamber and then hydrochloric acid in the Queen's chamber. And then we can move on to slide 3. This one's on page 32 in the text. This is going to be the beginning of us actually performing any type of reaction with the gold. So we're going to go down to the red lettering A. We're going to place the gold into and probably an altar-like area inside the subterranean pit. There's a couple places where you can rest some items inside the subterranean pit. We're going to pick one of those. We can place the gold on that. We're going to add river Nile, or not, the river water from the Nile going down the descended passageway again. And then we're going to release the hydrochloric acid from the Queen's chamber. It's going to fall down the ascending passageway and hit the subterranean chamber eventually, and then we can agitate this. Now this is where some speculation comes in, because over time, if you give it enough time, it will eventually dissolve the gold, but I'm not so sure how long that takes. It could take months, it could take years. But a catalyst that would help speed the process up would be hydrogen peroxide, and that's what I use for my own recipe, and that's what Don Nance likes to use as well, and others. So we're going to say, okay, maybe they're pumping that from another portion away from the pyramids, or we're just going to let it sit and it's not going to be hydrogen peroxide. Either one will work. It's just that one is a lot faster than the other. So we're going to let that sit. It's going to dissolve the gold into a gold trichloride, and it's going to be a very bright, pretty color. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the starting process where the Nile River water would have been added, and I'm using reverse osmosis water for this. You got salt, and then you have hydrochloric acid, and the gold, obviously. And that's what it looks like when it gets started. That's one of my beakers. And as you can see, I have a really expensive lab. Paper towel is my base. I'm using a quarter for reference, and then that's a coffee carafe as my beaker.
You know, if it's good enough for coffee, it's good enough for monoatomic gold.
You're right. They're going to drink both of them. So, okay, and then this is after it's set for quite a while. This is after about 2 or 3 days. This would have been, I think, my first attempt when I was filming this. So I have polished it up to where it doesn't take this long. But my first attempt did take quite a while. Go ahead.
Have you seen anything with the use of the muriatic acid or stomach acid for the process? I know
Yeah,
sorry, go on.
The hydrochloric acid would be synonymous with muriatic acid and stomach acid, yeah.
I always found that nobody really talked about that, but I thought that was a very interesting notion for the people that were looking at ingesting this kind of stuff in terms of the digestive system and the bioelectrical portion of the human body.
Yeah, it helps for ingesting.
Not a lot of people talk about how the metals are absorbed by the human body. It's an interesting mystery of nutrition.
Well, you get those occasional people who can, they eat quarters, or they can eat nails or in glass and what have you, and it's usually you hear about them on, well, I forget what the show was called, but it's like you get some guy in China who, like, it's like, oh, he just discovered one day he can eat nails, and he's been eating metal objects ever since, and it's like, oh, you just see him like sitting there eating a telephone or, like a block of steel. It's like, what the hell? Like, how is this something that's genetic? Is it just like somebody's got really strong stomach acid, or is it like a genetic, like just a quirk of nature?
There's a weird paradigm shift to be had there.
So sorry.
So are they dissolving it and then they go to have an X-ray and it's not there anymore?
Well,
that'll be crazy.
my thing is like, how do you pass that? Like, how much bran do you have to eat to be able to, to be able to get that out of your system or work it through your system? Like, I've
taken us down a tangent here, but
you did.
I think the muriatic acid and stomach acid is worth mentioning to the viewers and to the sake of the mystery of all this stuff. Anyway, please continue.
Yeah, you have to deliver it in some form, and when it's precipitate, it's probably not as easily deliverable as when it's dissolved in your stomach acid. So I think the stomach acid would be your friend in this case for bioavailability.
Now, how do you tell if you've like at this early stage if you've done wrong? Like, what would a bad example be described as?
It would stay like this. So this is for the visual aspect of the listener. It'd be nice to see this, but we're looking at a slide.
They can see this. We're streaming the slides live.
Okay, but for later, if they go back and they're not watching it.
True enough.
What you're looking at is gold flakes or flecks that are suspended in a solution, in a fluid. So all it looks like is just little pieces of gold sitting in fluid. Now, if it's going wrong at this stage, then it will stay that way and they will not dissolve, or in Alex's case, they won't digest. But if it's going correct, then you'll look at this slide and you'll see that the flecks are disappearing and they are dissolving into the acid and turning the solution a very, very bright yellow, as if you ate an entire can of asparagus and when you peed in the toilet, it filled it with very bright pee. It looks just like that.
Now, what would have been one of the things that somebody could have done wrong? Like, what step could they have messed up on? If it's like, is it a quantity issue? Is it impurities that are?
They're missing their pH meter, most likely.
Okay.
Well,
digital pH meter, or is that too early in the process?
It's right now. That's not really necessary, but in later processes, yes, that would be important. But this is an extremely the interesting thing about it is a very visual process. So as long as you can see through your beaker and you can see what's going on, it's a very colorful process. You go from this color to several other colors, and we're going to get into those in just a minute in later steps. But this is a good example. You've got the asparagus pea is what you're looking at here, and it is beautifully dissolved gold. This is taken a little bit early because you can still see the flakes at the bottom, but you can definitely tell that most of it is dissolved. So now we're on to step 4, the slide that's on page 33 in the text. And what you'll find here is that now you have a very low pH gold that is dissolved in the solution that's in the subterranean pit, and you're going to release now the sodium hydroxide from the King's chamber, and it's going to go through the baffles, because they should be able to go up and down and let little bits out at a time, fall down the ascending chamber or ascending passageway, then the descending passageway down to the subterranean pit. They mix together, and then you get a change in pH, and a little battle is going on here where it doesn't want to change pH, but the sodium hydroxide is trying to force it. You've got something that's a 1 pH hydrochloric acid that's being instantly hit and colliding with the sodium hydroxide, which is like a 13 pH. So it's a real big battle going back and forth here between what pH they want to settle at. So once you bring the pH up high enough, then what you're going to see is another change. Let's see, and this is the solution that you'll see now. So now the gold has precipitated back out. In this slide, you have a higher volume of fluid that you can see, because the quarter helps to tell you that the level has gone up now. You're sitting at a pH of about 10.78, close to 11, and you've got a brownish purple precipitate that is inside of this high pH solution.
And so in the beaker, not in the pyramid, how did you just jump steps there?
Okay, so in the beaker, what I've done is add sodium hydroxide to this, which is the acidic solution that has the dissolved gold in it.
So now you're at like a 50-50 ratio of the two, or?
Well, it's I'm not going to go into the exact way to do it, because I don't want to go down the path of, you're dealing with very dangerous chemicals right here. So I don't want to go on the show and put myself out there and telling people exactly how to do it on a mass scale. But you can read about it and find out exactly how to do it using Don Nance's method in the book. That's not a problem. Sure. But yes, there is. You're feathering it in. It's going in a very slow manner, and you're precipitating it out, and you end up with this high pH solution here with this purplish brown precipitate in this step. So that would be, we've gone to B now in this step 4 slide, and you're going to go back and forth. So now we're going to flip it back and forth, because we want to break it apart several times and redissolve it, break it, redissolve it, precipitate it out. And let's see and then, so here it is again. We have added acid once again from the Queen's chamber, and this is what it looks like again. You got that nice yellow color here. It's a little cloudy now because we're starting to agitate it, but there it is again, that pretty yellow hydrochloric acid with the gold in it. And then we're going to feather it again and cook it, and then you get this beautiful white solution here, where it's all it is salty water at a neutral pH, and you have precipitated out the white powder gold in this solution here. And you in the picture, for those that you can't see, it looks like it's snow sitting inside of a jar with water on top of it that you can kind of see through. So in that, we've gotten all the way to the point where we have a salty solution with white powder gold in it, using a ram pump to send fluid to different parts of the pyramid. And we mainly need to figure out where we're going to store the chlorine gas to make the hydrochloric acid. That's the hardest part about this. And that was the one piece that I wanted to put in the theory to help guide our attention to it, to see if that was something that would eventually be discovered. And to be honest with you, I thought that I would be long dead before anybody discovered anything like that inside the pyramid. However, there has been as of October of last year, a new discovery inside the Great Pyramid using some fairly revolutionary new technology.
Are you talking about there's some infrared camera stuff that came out recently. There's some LiDAR, ground penetrating radar information that's being updated. There's actual tiny drone footage going through those little tunnels right now. I feel like those should all be made available to the public.
Yeah, eventually we should be able to see all of those pictures. The ones that I have been able to find are based off of the project that ironically was head up by Zahi Hawass, who's the former Minister of Antiquities, and he was championing this project. You've got the HIP Institute involved, Arab Republic of Egypt is involved, and the Cairo University is involved, and then the technology looks like it's coming out of Japan. You've got, like you said, infrared technology was used, and there was something new coming out of Japan that they used to scan volcanoes to look for voids inside volcanoes, and they used cosmic ray sensors in order to find these. Now, cosmic rays are like a cocktail. There's like a basket of rays, that high energy rays that are coming in with it. But what they used specifically was they were looking for muons, and they used something called muography. And it's basically aluminum plates that they laid underneath where they thought the target area was. They coated it with a special film, and then they measured what direction these muons were coming from. Were they random? Were they aligned? In what direction were they coming from? And used that with the thermography, and then put it together in a 3D simulation to show us where, or if there was a void. And then they actually did discover that there was a void. And it's almost like, once again, the void is hiding behind one of the most obvious features that you can see right now on the outside of the pyramid, and it is behind the chevrons. So halfway up the side of the pyramid, they did find that this cavity was there using the muography. And there's a second void that I'm not getting access to yet, that hopefully they're going to give us access to, the second void that is a little bit higher up from where this void that we're talking about today, where it is. But this void, you can see, and this is from the Scan Pyramids project. This is just a screenshot. And those little white cubes that you see is where the muography discovered the void would be. So I don't know what their plans are to go inside of that, or if they're allowed to go inside of that, but I'm sure Zahi Hawass will be letting us know soon what their direction is from here. But that location of that void, that's just the fact that they discovered that in the general area where I kind of needed that to be for this chlorine gas chamber, is that's pretty significant. I don't know if that's what they're going to find there, but it's quite an amazing discovery that lines up pretty well with where originally I thought it was. Now, that yellow dot in this slide shows where the actual void is, and that is a little bit away from where I thought it would be, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible to work that way. It could still work that way. And then here I have them side by side showing where that void is on the 3D model versus where I suspected that it could be on my slide there. So I found that pretty fascinating, and I wanted to share that with your listening audience before it got too far out of the way and we lost interest in that new void.
Have you speculated on like a stack effect for heat and the proximity of some of these chambers to interior walls or exterior walls, or anything along those lines have crossed your mind over the years?
I did not speculate that there would be any heat created inside the pyramid. But we are starting to see with this thermal imagery that, yes, some of the blocks around the base, you can see them on the thermal imagery with the same project. You find that it is significantly hotter in some parts of the pyramid.
Do you find any sort of any heat during some of the chemical reactions in the beakers on the smaller scale, or?
Absolutely. Another aspect that was discovered in from lightness into dark, and the author is escaping me at the moment, but if you Google the book From Lightness to Dark, you'll find that there is some staining in the upper part of the Grand Gallery, and in that staining is a very dark color, and that color is like a blackish color. And one of the steps when you're making monoatomic gold is that you will get a hot black solution, and if you do it too fast, if you add your sodium hydroxide too fast, it can boil over, fizz up, and send that black solution up into the air. And I've spilled it on my table before, and it stained it permanently black. So that's very similar evidence of heat possibly traveling up the descending passageway and then up the ascending passageway. You can find that evidence of heat and percolation and vapor bringing that solution up to the ceiling in the Grand Gallery. That's also a possibility there. So yes, there's not only do you find it in the pyramid with the thermal imagery, ironically right now, which I'd say seriously doubt there's any reaction going on right now, but that thermal anomaly is still there for some reason. But yes, in the lab, I do get lots of heat when you're switching the pH in either direction.
Was there any speculation on with the water and the Nile water flooding in under this theory? Any speculation on, because the pyramid's so interestingly aligned, on the tide being involved with 4 cycles of tide throughout the day versus a ram pump kind of system in the basement of the pyramid? Sort of missing a smoking gun of a pump in the basement, maybe, but maybe there's a stack effect, maybe there's some sort of tidal effect. That's
I personally have not gone down that path now with a tidal effect.
It's a large volume of water. Just some weird notion that crossed my mind. We'll go back to your slides.
If you have a large volume of water coming in, that could either really, really help if it's supposed to happen, or it could really mess things up if it's not.
Now,
that is it for the slides, though. That was the last of the update, but we can definitely touch on any other subject or this subject if you have questions.
Now, I know that you have quite the recipe for brewing beer, and I'd like people to get to that more towards the end of the show. Now, I know that there are some researchers that I've talked to who are, and this is a possibility because that you may be able to clear up, because I am one of the reasons why we do this show is because there is so much information that's out there with regards to either Egypt or the Great Pyramids that we're trying to kind of collate everything into a coherent tale, as it were, like a repository, and kind of make sense of everything and find out what fits where. And some researchers have stated that the pyramid itself may have been, like, there are certain doors that were in that are in certain parts of the chamber, or I should say certain parts of the corridors. And like
it's like pre-Flinders Petrie going into certain rooms of the pyramid, or
like were there like trap doors like there are in some of the air shafts that had prevented the liquid from going one way or another?
Well,
you'd have to read some really old archaeologist logs for that answer. But
yeah, I mean that's an interesting topic to bring up, because if you go back to the Gantenbrink door at the end of, I would like to say that there's most likely some type of door similar to that at the end of every shaft, every air shaft. We've we found them in the King's Chamber, and you find these metal probes, and since there's some multi-purpose use in several of these chambers, I would suspect that why wouldn't there be multi-purpose use with the Gantenbrink door? Yes, it's holding back fluid, but did it have a way of moving? I don't think we have that answer yet, but there's a possibility that it could have had the ability to move in some way to either let more fluid or less fluid down the shaft. So yeah, that specific example of a trap door, so to speak, is possible, but going into booby traps and things of that nature, that I'm unaware of.
And with regards to the pyramid itself, I know that there are tons of theories out there. There are theories with regards to it being used as I said, as a water pump. There are some out there that are stating that it was used for for electricity generation. Is this something that it's potentially a multi-use type of pyramid, like a multi-use machine or multi-tool, a very, very large multi-tool that does not have
an Egyptian Swiss Army knife?
Oh yeah, without the bottle opener and that saw that doesn't do anything. How would that have worked if it's a possibility, or is this more just a case of certain signs leading some researchers in one direction, certain signs leading them in another? Like, can all correlations be right, or most of them?
I am so glad you asked that question, because I have an emphatic yes. Yes, I do think it was a Swiss Army knife. Yes, I do think it was a multi-purpose machine. And yes, I do think it was a multi-purpose consciousness machine, an ascension machine as well.
Look at all the byproducts that come off of modern chemical factories. All kinds of interesting spin-off stuff.
Those are leaps. Yes, I'll give you that. Those are leaps, but you always have to go out on a limb in order to create the idea that there is something to this, so that we can look for things to discover inside the pyramid. That's how we discover things in the pyramid, is that we think there's more. And that, what you just said, it hits the nail right on the head. I do believe that there are more reasons for this pyramid other than just being a monolith to pique our curiosity. That's what led us to break into it in the first place. That's what led us down these passageways. That's what led us up the passageways. And that's what sent us up the air shaft to begin with, is because we, deep down in our consciousness, believe that this is a complicated device. People today say that they can lay down in the coffer inside the King's Chamber and they can have extremely euphoric consciousness experiences. You can meditate in there, and you feel like you can have a lucid dream and travel. So that
nobody moves 100-ton blocks because they look pretty.
Right. That's true. That's true.
Very plainly.
You've only been married a week. Trust me, you'll find out soon enough. Now, I know that the pyramid, especially with the King's Chamber, one of the biggest things that people talk about is, especially in Graham Hancock can be considered a kind of a source for this, or at least a source for the curiosity, is that the Ark of the Covenant, or it's something that may have been an Ark-like piece of technology of a very similar fashion. And apparently the measurements in the Bible actually do match up to the size of the King's Chamber. Now, what are your thoughts on that being a possibility?
I do think that's possible. Now, this is, if things need to go in a certain order, then one of the possibilities would be that once the pyramid was finished making it, whatever amount of white powder gold that it was supposed to make, and it completed that job, then someone said, okay, it's time to put the ark in now. So they take it up and they house it in the King's Chamber inside the coffer. What better place to protect the Ark of the Covenant than inside the center of the pyramid? I mean, that's a great place to hide that thing, number one. And number two, it's a very safe place for it to be if it does what the Bible and lore says it does. So yes, I would agree that is a great place for that thing to be. And God knows what in the world it could do, because we've heard the stories in the Bible of what that thing could do and what happens if you don't respect it enough and treat it well enough to protect it and others from it.
I always find it remarkable that it wouldn't have surfaced by now with all the world wars and all these things, that relic wouldn't have just shown up.
It's in Ethiopia.
Theoretically, yeah.
Theoretically.
Which, we haven't smashed down the doors of the Smithsonian looking for the mysterious pieces. We haven't barged into Ethiopia to, nobody's put the capstone back on the pyramid. What are we all waiting for here?
Have you seen, Raiders of the Lost Ark? That stuff will melt your face right off, man. I'm not going to touch that. You kidding me? Oh, shit. No, hell no. I know that some of the...
How many generations before we take action on some of these mysteries?
Well, do you have money to go to Ethiopia? I will fly there tomorrow morning if you want to go. If somebody
see
would
our
like
Patreon account.
See our Patreon account to help us fund a trip to Ethiopia. Let's go get that ark and let's put it back in the pyramid. Let's make some monoatomic gold. Now, why do you think they use the pyramid for monoatomic gold? You can create it on your tabletop using, very, very simple tools such as Bounty. It looks like, at least from the quilting I could see, it's potentially Bounty. It could be the Kirkland brand from Costco. I don't know. They look the same and work the same.
You're right. It's Bounty.
Beakers and bottles are going to make this stuff. Why move 100-ton blocks?
How much monoatomic gold could they need?
They're going to filter the entire Nile.
Well, you hit on something at the beginning of your question that I think needs some discussion, and this is not my expertise, but I do think that there's something to this, and that is the shape of the pyramid. So you're right. You can make this in your lab. You can do this in your bathroom on top of Bounty towels if you want. But why would they go to the trouble to do this in what appears to be an automated fashion inside of something this large that is the shape of a pyramid? And I think where we're going with this is kind of the pyramid research, the shape of pyramids, the angles of the pyramids, what do they do? And that's actually something that as recently as probably this year, David Wilcock has discussed in some of his shows on Gaia, where they would perform experiments, put water inside some of these pyramids, and then they would become super healthy and have lots of healing properties, or it would clean crystals and get the impurities out of crystals, and the redness, the quartz would clean up inside these pyramids.
What was the book, Shape Power by Dan Davidson, I think, and then Viktor Grebennikov.
That would be a good...
He was talking about the Egyptian scarabs and the underside when they do electron microscope, I can't even pronounce that. Electron, help me out here, Chris. Electron microscopy.
You're asking me? I can't. I have problems pronouncing simple 4-syllable words. You're asking for something that's 10 syllables.
Extreme zoom-ins on the underside of the Egyptian scarab.
So now we're going back to the grammar
beetles.
issue that we talked about earlier today on Twitter. It's surfaced now.
Well, I've only had one, surprisingly enough, I've only had one glass of scotch at this point. It's probably because our opening segment isn't as long as it usually was, but I think I'm just going to add to that. Yeah, there we go. I know
But I do think that the pyramid shape is charging what you're making inside of the pyramid with some type of energy that would be coming out of the earth in some way. Like, is it magnetic energy? Is it electromagnetic energy? Is it something else that we don't know about? And I would venture to say it's something else. It is something else.
A couple of
and then
a few times now we've name dropped the Viktor Grebennikov research on the scarabs, and they had sort of a slight levitation effect, and due to this structure underneath the husks of where they cover their wings. If you haven't seen that, we'll send you some links to it. It's pretty interesting research.
That'd be cool. Yeah, that sounds really interesting because
everyone's
what is that coating?
Everyone's seen the scarab iconic. I'm
going
to go back to my Red Bull until I can start pronouncing words here. Everyone's seen the scarab icon in association with ancient Egypt.
And I'm just going to bring that on.
He was a entomologist who studied the bugs for a living, and he apparently discovered some pretty interesting sort of a static electric anti-gravitic sort of effect with the scarab beetles.
Yeah, I'm showing it on air right now before I send it to you, just because it's easier for me to...
Apparently, it made a platform that would sort of apply this weird static anti-gravitic effect.
Yeah,
it's really... It's a whole rabbit hole in itself.
Well, again, there's also a possibility he just jumped. Like a pogo stick.
There's videos of people, modern videos, clear videos of people playing with these scarab husks. There's sort of like a static effect where they hover and levitate.
Maybe they're coated with monoatomic gold.
Well,
naturally,
the theory, if you follow that line, is that you can look at the shape power stuff. What was the other one? Geocorrelated magnets. There's some interesting. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here, but shape power is the book I would recommend. But there's also a whole bunch of new stuff coming out on correlated magnetics. Anyway, those are just name-dropping stuff for people, some of our listeners, to look up here.
Yeah, those are good threads to follow.
Oh, and I know that with a lot of the stuff that we've been following on this show, like the star in a jar is one thing that we wanted to try at some point, and I know that actually, like, one of our listeners in the YouTube channel is an audio engineer. We've got another one whose husband is a physicist. So it's like, okay, now we're starting to build a team where we can actually test this shit out on a constant basis.
Sonoluminescence was the term for the star in the jar, using sound to create light.
And like, that's a possibility that the pyramid itself could have been used to generate power, using that as a byproduct of part of his generation. At least it's a theory. Like
hundreds of mantis shrimp in the king's chamber.
I know that you've had you've had a lot of experiences with regards to like meditation, and in terms of being able to being a medium for a knowledge repository. And again, I'm referring to your Jimmy Church Fade to Black episode from 2015. Go back, Litepe.
Everybody's got a mind's eye.
So I know that there's a very interesting story behind a lot of a lot of the information that you do have, and I'd love to be able to hear kind of firsthand and be able to kind of discuss it, because at least it's something that we do touch on, or at least have touched on in the show, and we haven't really had the pleasure of going into much depth on.
Well, it's something that we touched on at the very beginning of the show when we were talking about how this came about. But I think one of the neat things that have happened after this journey has started, and the theory is out there, and I've had some time to use monoatomic gold on my own and contemplate lots of things, since that has started. And it's really comes down to the placebo effect and how it is going to amplify. And the reason why I keep bringing that up is because we are always sending some type of signal, not only within our bodies, but it's radiating out into the area around us. And sometimes you can feel it when you just walk towards someone and you have a thought and they just look at you strange. Either they look at you like they smile at you and they greet you very well, or if you're in a bad mood and you don't think you're even making a face, they'll mirror that bad mood back to you. And that's kind of the amplified placebo effect, where you're sending that energy out.
You've got that sort of weird thing. You look at the back of somebody's head who's like 100 yards away, and they turn around and suddenly look at you. That kind of woo-woo stuff.
Those kind of things happen more often after you've been taking monoatomic gold for a while. Your dreams become more clear. You can start experimenting with lucid dreaming. that's something that I've been doing. I've been keeping a dream journal ever since this started, when I had that first strange experience. And I've noticed that my lucidity inside of dreams is growing to where I can kind of manipulate what happens in the dream. I will have the dream symbol come in, but yet I can, after the dream symbol is communicated to me, because it's always something important, that it's a lesson for me to learn. Each of us have lessons to learn in our own dreams, but then afterwards you can play around with them, and you can do things like fly a little bit easier whenever you decide that you want to. You can try to change the symbol a little bit to see, okay, yes I can, or no I cannot. So those kind of things happen more and more. And another thing that I've noticed is that the idea of manifestation, I'm sure that's a buzz term that has come up on your show with some of your guests, is the ability to manifest. And as we go into
that's the essence of Freemasonry, technically, at least as far as my opinion goes.
Well, that's something that's been new to me. Let's see, when was this? This is something I haven't even told my students or anybody in the interviews, but in 2006 or 7, I tried to petition to join a lodge in Tennessee, and I ended up actually getting blackballed because one of the old guys in the lodge got me confused with somebody else with the same first name. Not everybody you run into is named Spencer. That's kind of a little bit of a unique name for my generation. But, for whatever reason, he thought that I was not the material to join the lodge, and I was blackballed. And come to find out that was, I think it's a good thing in the end right now, as looking back on it, that did not happen, because based on what I've learned, there's secrets, and I don't know what secrets are not allowed to be told, and it's a good thing that I feel like I can share these secrets freely, whereas I know that you're a Mason, and I don't know what the secrets are that you hold, but I'm not going to speculate on what those are.
Oh, I could tell you. Our obligation, the passwords to get in and out of a lodge, and the 3 words that are in each of the degrees. That's pretty much all that's pretty much it. Like this, and the signs, obviously, like the handshakes, the signs, the basic things that are meant to use to try and identify one Mason to another. Beyond that, like in terms of what happens in a lodge, it's a lot of business and a lot of discussion and paying bills, and what happens in the degree. A lot of bringing somebody around a room. If you search on YouTube, if you search on Google, you can find it. So those are the only actual secrets, and those secrets are there for 2 purposes. One, because it is it's traditional. That certain degrees or like certain levels of being an actual stonemason, where you needed to know a certain word to be able to prove that you were somebody who could work a stone a certain way at a job site you just showed up to after traveling halfway across Europe. And also, as another caveat to, more of a newer term, is to be able to prove to ourselves that we can actually keep our word. Because, we swear on a holy book, whether you're, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, you have your own holy book for it. And we basically say we will not divulge the secrets based on, and we swear to the Almighty that we're not going to do that. And if we do give those secrets, if we do tell somebody that handshake or that word, then we're all of a sudden a perjured individual, and it's to hold ourselves accountable. So though that's the only thing when it comes to the secrets, and that's
there's not that many spooky people in the world.
Yeah, no, like a lot of it's.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
There's a lot of you can apply consciousness to some of these big ideas about biochemistry and the pyramids and ancient history, and I venture there's not that many spooky people out there as we're led to believe by all the trolls on the internet, and that everybody's curious about this stuff, and it's okay to speak up about it. Nobody's there's no boogeyman that's going to come get you for talking about this stuff. They don't exist.
What I'm envisioning and what I'm hoping is going on behind those walls, that is going on outside of the walls, is that we are all looking for the same answers to the same mysteries.
They're probably all trying to have the conversation that we're having right now.
Yeah.
Truth be told.
We're coming together, and you guys have a really deep history in this symbolism, and the curiosity is really, really ingrained in the Mason. I can tell. Even my grandfather on both sides, they were both Masons. I have an uncle that's a Mason. My grandfather was a Shriner, and my other grandfather stopped at 3rd degree. But it's in the family, and they were very curious, just like I'm curious. And I'm just hoping that we can all come together, be curious, and find the answers to these questions without having to worry about, okay, when I do discover this, is this going to be whisked away and put in a vault in the Smithsonian like you guys were talking about? That's the last thing that I want to see. And that's why I've been coming out with every tiny little discovery that I have had, as minuscule as they are. This has been an extremely humbling experience for me, because you have to see where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a business degree, and I'm trying to share a chemical process inside of an ancient artifact that has been studied for thousands of years. And I'm supposed to be the one that's coming forward with this information? I mean, really, me? And this has really been a strange experience for me. And I try to answer these questions like Alex has, as best I possibly can. But I only know what I know. And as Donald Rumsfeld says, there are unknown unknowns, and there's a lot with this, I can assure you.
Unknown unknowns. It's like, I can
It's going to take a torrent of different consciousnesses applied to this simultaneously to get close to cracking the mysteries.
You're a family man. Well, when you first, you've been married for a number of years now, longer than I have. When you first stumbled across this process and this knowledge, or stumbled across, when it was thrust upon you, what was the initial reaction from your family? Like, obviously, there's always skepticism in every single, every single marriage. I know, starting up this podcast, my darling wife may have been a bit skeptical about its success or the ability to stick to it, but here we are. What was her opinion, and how did you kind of work with that to get to where you are right now?
Do you feel like you're supported with fringe ideas with the people in your life? Because everybody has all these weird fringe ideas, but we don't all get a chance to talk about them with like-minded individuals.
At the beginning, it did not seem that way, but it was about a week after I had finished the book. I hadn't even really sent it off to anyone yet. My wife decided that she was going to read it, and she read it after showing lots of skepticism, wondering what in the world this was all about. And at the end of it, she came to me and she said, I don't really know what I just read, but I think that you are onto something here. And that's all I needed to hear. I just needed that. That was the most important person in my life at that moment, telling me that I was onto something. And, coming from your significant other, that is sometimes, that could be the sweetest thing that you could ever hear. Yes, you want your peers to think of this as something significant, but really, in order for you as a family man to move forward and keep pushing forward with this idea, you kind of need your spouse's backing, and she did. And so it's been a great ride ever since.
Now, for any of the students, and you said that you have students, how does your class work exactly, and how did you set that up originally?
Just kind of coming to the realization that there was a demand for it, and I had to figure out how to solve that problem. Because, like I said at the beginning, I don't want to keep this a secret. I want to teach people how this works and how to do it themselves. So all I did was come up with the curriculum, and now I teach it over Skype. And I believe I have the capacity to teach 4 people to 5 people at one time. But at the moment, it's not reached that capacity, and I'm able to teach one person individually. So right now, it's just a one-on-one session with rolling semesters. And it takes about three months to go through the entire process from start to finish. And hopefully I can keep it that way where I'm just teaching one person at a time. But it can come on to where I can do whatever Skype will allow me to do, to having 4 people on at the same time. That can work. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Did you have any interesting experiences reaching out to people like Don Nance? Or
when I tried to reach out with him, I didn't get a response. So unfortunately, no.
And for at least from an atomic gold creation standpoint, obviously there are some very dangerous chemicals that are used within this. I know that when the last time that I joined a Alex knowledge party, where basically it's just sitting down and watching a bunch of YouTube clips about, well, mostly monoatomic gold the last time I saw.
I dragged Chris through the rabbit holes.
Well,
some days.
I've already been dragged through the rabbit holes and I'm back out the other side. Now I'm just trying to figure it all out. Like there was the one German video, and that might be the video you had talked about at the beginning of the show, where he goes through the entire process, and it just has the worst overdub of the process imaginable. And like I'm not sure if this is the one that you're talking about. It's like, okay,
I think it is.
We're just happy to get some English content on the internet.
Like it's like if you're like, if this is supposed to be the most life-changing, astronomically amazing stuff on the planet, like if this is, like the manna from heaven, as it were, and I'm going to make it based off of the guy who can barely speak English on the internet. Like I'm hoping that there's not some people out there.
Focus a camera.
Or like, yeah, focus a camera, for love of God. Like, you went through the entire process and it was clear, it was concise, it made sense. And I felt like the other video that was out there was like, okay, this is how you produce, very low-based crystal meth off of cough syrup. And
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah.
Well, I know, but like that was the general theme of it, and like with your process, it's clear. It's okay. This is what you look like. This is step 1. This is what it should look like. Here's something to scale. You add the acid. You add you add this. You let it sit. This is what you get, and it makes sense. Like, how long did it take you to get that process right?
You've got trans-dimensional materials coming out of something that looks like a meth lab.
Yeah, like.
Just what?
There needs to be a little more veracity and a little more presentation, a little branding, a good branding with it. And you seem to have cornered that, which is good, because it actually, like for somebody who's new to the system, it makes me want to try it out.
Who's carrying the torch for Lawrence Gardner's work now that he's passed away? There's an important question.
I don't know who is. I've been told that I'm doing it, but I'm not really doing a great job. So I have to apologize about that. But I don't know. I don't know who's carrying that torch. I'm trying my best, but sometimes my kids don't allow me to do that because they require 99% of my attention most of the time, and I have to bend over backwards to be allowed to do shows like this and make the stars align to make it happen. And I thank everyone who's helped make that happen. But I'm taking the slow approach. And I think eventually we're going to find most of the answers that we need as a civilization in order to succeed in this ascension process. If you believe that there's an ascension, I personally do. I believe that it's happening, and I feel that it's happening more and more every day, because my personal experience with it has been getting to know my ability to have unconditional love in moments where you'd think it's completely impossible. We all feel it when we have our pet. We have our unconditional love with our pets, and it comes very easy. But where is that with our family? Where is that when we go to the post office when we feel like we're getting the shaft behind the counter, waiting in line at the post office for 3 hours. We need to have it
no
then
pyramid
too.
pun included or intended.
You got to sequence those emotions. If you do have a soul, we talked about that actually a little bit on that Ghost Hunters episode, Chris. But if you presume that there's a soul and you presume there's an afterlife, then you've got a progression, and then that progression would ultimately lead you towards something like manifesting unlimited amounts of what your mind can conceive. You've got to you're a soul that's learning to have and sequence its emotions. So you've got to sort of control yourself, whether it's through alchemy or just the mundane day-to-day life.
Now, what are some of the setbacks you had learning this process? Like, obviously, no process is always right 100% of the time, and it's a possibility for those that are interested in producing monoatomic gold that learning how, learning from somebody who knows, who has walked the path, the stumbles along the way may help them towards further success. Like, there was the table for one. Like, was there a point in time where, anything potential, like interesting or setbacky happened?
Well, yeah, and the first time I tried to make it, I was using litmus paper to try to measure the pH instead of using a pH meter, and that got way out of hand. And it took me about 3 batches trying it that way before I figured out that, okay, I'm going to have to invest in a pH meter here instead of using litmus paper. This is not working. But it would boil over, spill, and I'd have to clean up a pretty nasty mess, and burning my fingers and coughing uncontrollably because I was totally unaware of the dangers of vaporized sodium hydroxide, and all of those things are going to be your stumbling blocks along the way. But guess what? I have gone through those mistakes so that other people don't have to if they don't want to. You can use the recipe in the book if you want to, if you're on a budget and you want to, take a long time to try to figure out. Or you can, contact me directly, and I'll be happy to teach people who are serious about learning how to do this. And if you don't want to learn how to do it, that's fine. You can. One of my students has actually decided to sell it now, and he has a website. I'm trying to remember. I think it's called buymonoatomicgold.com. I think is the name of that.
That's one of your
used
students?
my recipe. Yeah.
Shit, I almost bought monoatomic gold off of that guy.
Oh, well, he was one of my students, and he, I'm assuming he's using the process that he learned in my class. So last time I was in a program, I did not have anyone I could recommend because I didn't know how they were making it. But now he does. At buymonoatomicgold.com does know how to do it. And so I would recommend looking that one up and trying that. If you like it and you want to learn how to make it yourself, then contact me and I'll be happy to help you with that.
Did you ever look at linking up with someone like Robert Bartlett or other practicing alchemical folks? There's only a billion people on the earth, and apparently there's only a half dozen practicing alchemists.
Yeah, that's
what?
That name is new to me. I would if you can send me his contact or somehow to contact him, I'd try to link up with them.
Interesting.
Okay. But I'm not familiar with that name, no.
Now, what is it like for the first time that you actually produced a usable batch?
There's a lot of alchemy about spagyric tinctures and things other than monoatomics as well, but that's a whole subject for another podcast.
Well, okay, I'm more along the idea of if this is you're basically eating a metal that you've have been producing with different chemicals, some of which if you ingest will kill you. The hydrochloric acid being one of the big ones. And you're sitting there and you're looking at this substance and you're like, okay, so do I snort it or do I what are the thoughts that go through your mind the first time you're actually trying this stuff?
Well, the recipe that Don Nance uses, he recommends drying it out. And so the first time I made it, I dried it out to a powder. And when I ingested it, when I ground it up and then ingested it and held it in my mouth the way it was recommended, it cut my gums up and cut my tongue up a little bit and irritated my mouth because it was just like glass shards. It was like broken ceramic inside of my mouth. So I didn't do it that way again. And I actually, you're probably going to hate me for saying this, but I actually threw that batch away and started over.
Ooh,
and I left
that's
it.
so bad. We're going to hang up on you right now. Like
there we go.
It's okay.
Continue. Are we still? We're not on anymore.
No. When I hang up on when I hang up on somebody, it's only because I've accidentally hung up on them, not because I actually hang up on them. So don't worry, you're fine.
But so the next time I made it, I left it in solution, suspended, and it was much easier to take. It was very soft, and it went down quite easy. And I almost immediately started to tell. I could tell that I felt something different. I felt calm yet excited. I felt like I had more access to myself. I felt as if things that I would normally do just felt easier. I was able to focus a lot easier. I'm a kind of a guy that grew up with ADD, and that starts to subside as well. It gives me the ability to focus on what I want to focus on mentally. And then also, I feel like I have a little bit more strength than I did previously. That was the first thing that I noticed. And then the next thing that I noticed after taking it was I had the ability to drift into a dream without actually falling asleep. So I didn't get the sensation of going unconscious and then reappearing conscious in a dream. It just went straight into a dream. I mean, it's not like it happened instantaneously, but I just drifted into a dream instead of falling asleep. And that kind of caught me off guard.
I've heard some people in their written records say it's sort of like switching on HD for your mind's eye.
Yeah, that would be a really good description of it. Because it's not like I levitated and became Superman and flew away. That did not happen. But little things seemed like bigger, more clear things. And looking at a CRT tube television and then looking at an HD TV, that's kind of how your thoughts became. It's not like I could see clearer. I'm colorblind. It's not like it made me not colorblind anymore. But what it did do is it allowed my brain to interpret what I'm seeing in a much more clear manner.
Have you seen those new glasses that just came out that help correct the color blindness?
Yeah, my daughter showed me that. She watched that on the science show, and that really intrigues me. I would love to try some of those out. I'm just dying to get my hands on some of those.
Now, I know that we kind of watched the trailer for that video, and Alex, remind me what the movie was called again?
For the monatomic?
Yeah.
All the gold you can eat?
Okay, so the big thing with one person was that they'd ingested, apparently this super pure, crazy atomic gold, that once they had actually ingested it for like the next while, they were essentially making, like, just kind of wrecking shit. They were this like metaphysical bull through a china shop. Like, how does that type of stuff work? Because like that was basically me when I was 25. And I didn't have any monoatomic gold. Let me just put it that way. You know what I mean?
Well, there's always somebody there to give you like the spooky message that like.
So like, how does that type of manifesting work with regards to monoatomic gold?
Well, the best that I could gather in that movie is that most of the movie they were talking about Ormus, where they were extracting metals out of like Dead Sea salt, ocean water, and that sort of thing. So it wasn't specifically monoatomic gold that they were ingesting, but it's a similar idea, and you're using that cocktail of noble metals in order to produce a similar effect. And yes, gold's going to be included in that.
No.
But Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask as a follow-up question. What's like I've heard Ormus, the term Ormus. I've heard monoatomic gold. What's the difference between them?
It's
in terms of,
I want to answer that one.
Well, I mean, in a metaphysical sense.
Oh, in a metaphysical sense, you're going to have a spiritual experience that's going to be different based on each metal that's in the cocktail in the precipitate. So gold is going to produce one spiritual ability or effect. Iridium is going to produce another, rhodium, and so on. Each one is going to have its own specialty. I don't know what the other specialties are because I didn't mess with those, but with gold specifically, that's the one that I was tinkering with.
If you read online, it's theorized that the monoatomic coppers can help people with if their hair has turned gray, that the color will come back into their hair because their body's finally getting what they need. There's a lot of associations. I feel like those things could be very easily empirically tested if there's some laboratory that's willing to do a little bit of work with some extraordinary claims. I don't even think it would take that long. Does it take a week to make monoatomic gold? Or monoatomic copper? It's not even that expensive to start with copper, right?
Yeah, maybe you guys can help us find some connections to start getting some of this laboratory work done. That'd be awesome.
Well, the interesting part is, and I know that my sister and my brother-in-law, they live in continents away. They used to live in Canada, and now they live in Australia, where it's warm all the time. You lucky sons of bitches. I know, like we've been like -20, -15 here, and it's the middle of March. It's crazy. The one downside to Canada, yes, it can get that cold. They were both chemists. Like they're training to be lawyers now. I think my sister's my sister's now a high school teacher, and my brother-in-law, I'm actually not too sure. I should catch up with him. I know that they were both, but they were both chemists, and they'd be the people I'd go to as far as understanding the process a little bit. But for somebody who's looking to start up, how do they source the chemicals? Like what's the overall process to kind of get things going?
Well, just from a bird's eye perspective, some of the things you're going to need are you're going to need stir plates, you're going to need beakers, you will need stir magnets, you will need glass wands for stirring in some cases. You will need sodium hydroxide powder would be part of the process. Hydrochloric acid is going to be part of the process. You're going to need to use some very, very pure gold, 23.5 karat or better. And I recommend edible types. You can actually find edible gold that they use in expensive restaurants. You're going to need some pure salt. And a lot of this, again, you can find these ingredient suggestions are in the book too. So if I'm glazing over this and forgetting something, you can refer back to that as well. But those are some of the things that you're going to need to start with, some of the chemicals in the equipment.
I feel like we're missing some sort of expert. Like David Hudson talked a lot about the monoatomic gold and the Ormus research, and there's all these other metals. And I would say, well, the cheapest one to play or to start with this, if you're going to experiment, obviously don't ingest anything, and also experiment with the copper or something that's readily available, much less expensive. And you could do empirical testing on lab mice or something with that. But there doesn't seem to be any experts or focus on the monoatomic copper stuff. Also, does that phase change at a particular heat level? You could run experiments on that, and it would cost a 1/100th of playing with gold in this line of chemistry.
Well, you can find lots of colloidal mixtures for these metals, but I personally, and not a lot of people that I have run into, are able to actually put it in nano form where it's actually in the monoatomic or close to monoatomic form like we're discussing here with gold. So that's going to be another process to learn, is how do you do this same or similar thing with silver, and how do you do this similar thing with copper and all of these others to get to the same result in the same type of precipitate. But colloidal mixtures are out there. They're just a little bit larger molecules and atom structures. But yeah, they're out there, and some of those also have proven to gather in the endocrine system, and they can be, heavy. Using
Would they
heavy metals is not great.
bioaccumulate or not bioaccumulate? They should be able to answer that. David Hudson's stuff, he says that he found some stuff out in his field, and it was like flash paper, just lit up and disappeared. You should be able to recreate that claim relatively easy, I would think.
Yeah, but I personally have not been able to go down that path. So.
I keep trying to lean away from some of the subjective part of this to, make it a reality for the broad public.
But that's where the funding comes in. That's where funding and availability to laboratory setting would be very, very helpful in these cases. And I personally have not had access to professional lab, so some of this is going to be out of my reach.
I don't even think we'd need a professional lab. Circumvent the bureaucracy. Just disclaimer, play safe, use safety equipment. But
if there are any listeners who are in YouTube chat right now who would like to lend us a dining room table, we would be much appreciated. Again, we will put a disclaimer up there. If if this entire process burns your table, we will not replace it. I will come shine it. I'll lather it up with some Windex or something, or pine salt. But if it burns, I can't do anything about it. Now, moving on from the monoatomic gold into kind of like our last segment, which again sometimes can be longer than our full segment. You are quite the brewmaster from our conversations, or at least you've got quite the process for beer. Now, I know that we're a Scotch family here, being Freemason, kind of our thing. How did your process for producing monoatomic gold stem from
the beer making?
From the beer making.
Yeah, that's.
And actually, give me. Sorry, 1 second.
There were a couple. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just noticed that our stream kind of cut out. Thank you, Rogers. Darn you, shaking my fist at the screen right now. So we're good. I just wanted to make sure that if you were speaking, it wasn't going to get cut out by really shitty internet.
Well, some of the tricks of the trade from the beer making definitely way over. It kind of shows my personality of how I was able to do some of the processes or some of the steps. And the way I make beer it's the way a lot of these brewers do it, is that you boil your wort and you get kill the bacteria in it and purify it. And looks like I may have lost something. Can you still hear me?
Oh, I turned off the camera to preserve bandwidth.
Okay, sorry about that. And in that process, you purify and you boil it off so that you get the bacteria out, and then you cool it off. You cool your wort off, and then you add yeast, and that now becomes beer. And it creates a head, and then that ferments down, and then the lees and what is called in winemaking, and the dredge will fall to the bottom, and that's the dead yeast that goes to the bottom. And then you have this tube like siphon that's called, in the beer making process, it's called a racking tube. And this racking tube is wonderful at taking off the beer that you want to take over to the second container so it can clarify better. And that tube is what I ended up using in the monoatomic gold process to take off the top water, take all that salt water out and leave behind the precipitate that was left behind. So that was one thing that I was able to use, and that was extremely helpful. And then the patience came in handy with the beer making, because you need to allow that dead yeast to spend some time to fall down to the bottom of the container. And it's the same thing with making white powder gold. You have to wait for it to fall down to the bottom of the container, and it takes as long as it takes. It could take a day, it could take a week, sometimes it could take a month for it to fall to a usable level and be able to extract that out. So that was very helpful take that from the beer making process. But my favorite is right now I like drinking IPAs because I like the complex bitterness. I used to be a porter and a stout kind of a guy, but that stuff seems a little bit too sweet to me now, and which is probably why I like single malt. I used to drink single malt Scotch, but I don't drink it a lot anymore because I don't have the body fat percentage anymore to metabolize it. It just goes straight to my head, and then I do things that I wish I did not do. I don't have a tolerance like I used to.
That's called episode 23 for all the listeners out there.
Did you guys talk about single malts then?
Oh God! Well, okay. What happened was that in episode 23, and I drink predominantly only Scotch, but at the beginning of the show, I told my darling wife, it's like, you know what, honey, tonight I'm going to try and cut back on the Scotch, and I'm going to drink Jack and Coke. So I went to the store, and I got some Coke Zero, and Jack. I had a large bottle of Jack Daniels that we still had from our wedding. I'm like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. A Coke Zero and Coke and Jack is great. Coke Zero and Jack is absolute shite. Do not drink it. Now, me being the type of person who hates to waste food or drink, I said, okay, well, this is crap. I'm going to switch to the Scotch. I chugged the Jack and Coke, and it was a fairly large glass, and not very much Jack, but a lot of Coke. And then we did some to kick off the episode. We had Brandon Powell and his brother on, and we did some Wim Hof breathing exercises, which is essentially forcing yourself to hyperventilate. To get it runs the blood through your system so fast that you actually start to release DMT, and through those exercises plus the amount of it allowed the sugar to start running through my system so fast that when I actually got to start drinking the Scotch, it actually hit me about 10 times as hard.
Wow.
And let's just say it was a very fun episode.
You're hyperventilating on cheap Scotch?
Well, no, I was hyperventilating on cheap bourbon, but, anyway, it was a very fun episode, but I don't remember much past the first hour and a half, I think. I think we went about 4 or 5 hours. We were supposed to watch Magical Egypt, and we got about 5 minutes into it, and then Randall Carlson took over, as Randall Carlson normally does, and decided and started to divulge a large amount of very fantastic, awesome information, which is great. I just wish I had not had the Jack and Coke beforehand. So, for anybody out there who's going to listen.
I wanted to say that it is, and I'm sure a lot of other people really appreciate the fact that you went out of your way to do a marathon show that was dedicated to John Anthony West and his condition. That was mighty, mighty fine of you. I'd like to thank you for doing that. I think the world of him. I wish him the best, and I can only hope that what you guys were able to produce is going to help him tremendously. So thank you very much for doing that.
Well, it's it's part of what we do. We're just a couple of guys, cool stuff, and if somebody needs help, we're there to be able to help them. With a lot of the things that are going on nowadays in the world, there are a lot of people out there who they don't realize that sometimes you just need to just kind of lend a helping hand and just pitch in. If the universe the universe will point you in the right direction, the universe will give the answer. And if we've got a platform, why not use that platform to be able to help somebody out who's given so much to so many of our listeners and so many of our just people in general in terms of the search for knowledge. It just kind of made sense.
Yeah, he really has. He opened my eyes to what was going on at the Temple of Luxor. He helped me contemplate my own spiritual growth in a profound way in that series. So in Magical Egypt, it was such an amazing program. And, I was hoping one day that I would be able to meet him in Egypt and go on a tour and just chill with him even, and so I hope that he's able to come through, and what you guys are doing is just tremendous. So again, thanks.
Have you had a chance to look at some of the stuff for Mount Cerebit as it relates to monatomics and Flinders Petrie?
Now, before we get into that, and again, I do apologize. I do have to switch internet connections just very briefly, so if we cut out for a quick second, ladies and gentlemen, I'm actually just changing from my Wi-Fi from one...
I have to put on the obligatory technical difficulties music. Hello,
can you hear me again?
Yep, and we are back, ladies and gentlemen. The wonders of technology and having internet connections from two different internet companies, and I'm wondering why, why I'm going to cancel one, because, that was the thing. Like, for our John Anthony West, like the second John Anthony West episode, I had... Like, the first one, I actually had, like, a mass amount of wires, like, streaming across the house to try and get from the computer to the router. And for the second show, I had 10 people on, plus I was also streaming video to them and then streaming out to the internet. And it was so slow that we kept having these issues. And, then I switched to the other provider, and it was fine.
Redundant internet.
But yeah, like starting up the stream, we kept getting like bitrate issues, and I actually started when we actually went live. I think I had like about a 5-minute tirade against Rogers' internet, as far as their ability to throttle your connection pretty much at any time. And I know that the United States has the same problem with Verizon or Comcast or what have you, and like. It's just like if you're going to provide internet and say it's up to 100 megabits a second or faster, actually provide it. Like, don't jerk your customers around. Like, how hard is it to be able to provide infrastructure nowadays? Like, seriously.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be getting 100, but I don't believe it. I don't see it.
Well,
it just.
I'm going to play devil's advocate and say, when was the last time you installed a demarcation point for an entire community?
I
do not appreciate the marvels of modern science.
Now, to be able to further our conversation, and going back to beer here, how did you get into beer brewing?
I just like beer, and I was getting headaches off of certain types of beer and becoming sensitive, so I decided that, okay, let's try to eliminate some of these chemicals that I think they're adding into it, and let me just go with the simplest chemicals and additives and ingredients, and I went for it. And the first few batches tasted terrible, but so did George Washington's beer that he suggested that his crew make. So, it did not work out the first few times. But after a while, I actually ended up preferring my beer over anything that I could buy in the store, and kind of went down that route of having a basket of beers that I was able to keep around and have on hand. But after a while, it got real popular, and that beer did not last very long as my friends and family got to know how good it was, and it disappeared. And now I haven't really been able to stay in the same place since we moved out to Arizona long enough to really put a good batch together. But hopefully, I'm looking forward to making one here soon. Hopefully, I can get into it. But that's kind of how it started, was just trying to eliminate some of the issues, and I was finally able to make some beer that was good enough and it tasted well for me, and then I was able to get rid of some of those headaches and stuff like that while I was drinking. Yeah, everybody's going to get headaches as a hangover, but while you're drinking the beer, come on, it should be enjoyable, and it wasn't.
Now, I'm just updating the show notes now that we're actually discussing your process for making beer. I'm actually quite interested to know, and being the Den of Lore, we are all about sharing and acquiring knowledge. Please enlighten me and the listeners at home on exactly how to make beer, because I've got a lot of friends who do it. None of them are talking, and I know that the process can sometimes be specialized from person to person, but at the same time, I live in Ottawa. Ottawa, Canada is one of the capitals, if not the capital, in all of Eastern North America for a craft brewery. And if I could break into the craft brewery market, then I can officially tell my wife that I'm a hipster.
Well, the key is making sure that all of your tools are clean. They have to be completely sanitary, if not surgically sanitary. And you start out by boiling water, and you can steep your grains as if you're making tea at the temperature between 150 to 170 degrees, depending on the type of beer you're making. And there's actually stores that you can go to that are specifically designed to cater to the BrewMaster. And there's one here that's probably 15 miles away from me right now on the outskirts of Phoenix in Mesa. And when you walk in this place, especially you as a Scotch connoisseur, you would love this place because you get to even smell the birthplace of the grain that's being used for every type of malt mixture, malt drink, whether it's beer, Scotch, whiskey, but all of it is right there. You've got everything from a blonde malt to a chocolate malt. If you're making porters and stouts, you can have a caramel malt. If you're making stuff like a Newcastle, a brown malt or a brown ale, but you steep your grains, and
some people steep them in water.
Yes, you'll steep them in water just as if you're making hot tea. You're not going to boil the grain because you don't want to cook all the oils out at this point. You just want to steep it so that you can have the aroma and you're making like a tea from it. And some people will make a all grain only beer, which is a really long process, and that's what the big breweries do. But I do a mixture. I do half grain and half liquid or dry malt, and that's basically condensed or evaporated and concentrated malt extract. It's kind of like syrup, but it's a malty syrup instead of like a cane sugar syrup or anything like that. But they actually concentrate the malt tea and turn it into a syrup. And then so you can combine all of those. So after you're done steeping your grains, like in a tea, you take out the grains and then you add your malt extract and stir that in. Then you bring it to a boil to kill all the germs in it. And then you cool it off. And one of the things that I use to cool mine off is it's a copper coil that you can send water through, and it can accelerate the cooling process by dropping it into it's kind of like a radiator that will cool your malt mixture, and then you stir it and you let it go through the cooling device, and then when you take that out, you clean it, and then you add your yeast after it gets to about room temperature. And if you're making a Pilsner, then you're going to store it in 55 degrees. If you're making a lager, you're going to store it at 35 or 36 degrees. And my favorite, which is an ale, you'll store it anywhere between 70 and 85 degrees. And this yeast, each type of beer, like lager, Pilsner, ale, stout, or porter, is going to have its own temperature and its own yeast type based on that temperature range that's going to help it ferment. And so after you pinch your yeast in, when you pinch your yeast, that's what the term is for throwing your yeast in. You let the yeast go to work, and over time, sometimes it could be 72 hours, sometimes it takes a couple weeks, but some time goes by and you've got a rough looking beer that is very, very cloudy and nasty looking, but you can drink it. And at this point you have to decide, okay, am I going to be serving dirty, nasty looking beer that tastes okay, or do I want to clear it up like the stuff that you buy on the shelves? And that's where you can move it into another container using your racking tube like we were talking about earlier, and let it sit in that vat. And it can clarify all of the yeast, then falls down to the bottom, and then you can serve it put it in bottles to carbonate. further once you put it in the bottles, or you can put it in kegs and add carbon dioxide, and it's all it just, you can artificially add the bubbles to it. Then you chill it, and then you've got your beer. There's the process.
You know, I know that some people who make it, especially with where my in-laws are from, it's starting to sprout quite the craft brewery cottage industry. And one of the big things is that they will take they'll take the malt and the hops and kind of the byproduct, and they'll actually donate it to farms for feed for their, for the horses or the cows or what have you. I don't know if this is something that's kind of like prevalent in Arizona. I actually don't know how prevalent the craft brewery industry is out in Arizona. But is that something that happens out there, or do you just kind of compost it and bring it back to the earth?
Well, I've used it, I've composted it before personally, but I'm not on a large enough scale to really take it out and donate it or sell it to any of these big cattle ranchers or anything like that. But I bet you they would love to get a hold of that. If you go to Japan, some of their best beef that they can serve, like Kobe beef, Wagyu beef, that stuff is grain-fed cow. But it's not just grain-fed cow. It's just like what you said. They are taking spent and brewed beer grain to the ranches, and they're serving that. And then they also will take hops and serve the hops to them too. And a lot of that has a little bit of alcohol in it, and it fattens those cows right up. And they taste. That's why it's some of the best tasting beef in the world. I don't eat beef anymore personally, but when I lived in Japan as a kid, and had some Kobe beef when I was out there, and it was absolutely delicious. It's better than any prime beef that you can get on this side of the pond, that's for sure.
I know that one of the big things in Australia is, and I know that's something that you do here for beef, is they'll actually take like the leftover beef from once they make the rest of the steak, and they'll use some enzyme to basically stick the beef together, and then wrap it in Saran wrap, chill it for like 24 hours, and then cut it up like it's and serve it, like sell it like it's sirloin. There was this big thing in Australia about it, and I know that they do it here in Canada because stores like Costco will do it. If you ever have like one of the styrofoam crates or like trays of steak, and it's like round like medallions of quote unquote sirloin, and you could see like the cellophane around it.
I think Chris is referring to the meat
glue. That's it.
Phenomena.
Yeah, the meat glue phenomena.
Wow.
They basically, they'll take the leftover shit, they'll stick it together, and then sell it like it's prime sirloin, and it can make you sick because it's like your regular steak is the muscle structure is such that the bacteria is on the outside. So when you cook it, it will kill the bacteria on the outside, and then even if it's medium rare, it's still safe to eat. This stuff you don't get that because what could be on the outside is now on the inside of the steak, and it's all just mashed together. And it's so for anybody out there, if you see medallions of quote unquote sirloin that are wrapped in styrofoam, do not buy that shit. That shit is bad, and even then, it's just lazy. It's just like it's false advertising. Like who fucking does that?
Before meat glue, they used to take the fresh ground beef and pack it on top of the old ground beef.
Yeah, well,
so you'd crack it in half, and it'd be gray on the middle and red on the outside.
It's starting to sound like it was a good idea that I stopped eating beef, huh?
Oh God, yeah. Like
getting back to metaphysics.
Well, I hate to do this to you guys, but I'm on the 5-minute warning right now to put my kids to bed.
Well, you know what? I am completely understanding of that. I was going to look over and say my dog is looking at me the same way, but no, he is passed out. Tyson is passed out and not causing any trouble. Spencer, I'm very thankful that you came onto the show. It's been a dream of Alex's for some time, and again, he can consider this his belated wedding present to be able to talk to a master of monoatomic gold. And I know one thing is that my wife actually does want to go to Arizona. And you're in Phoenix, correct?
Yeah, we would love to have you guys if you're in this area. We'd love to have you.
Well, apparently
plenty of room.
Well, fantastic, because apparently it's also one of the few places in the U.S. that's warm that does not have Zika. So it's somewhere we can go.
Well, would you like me to tell you what the temperature is right now?
I don't know, because I think I may actually hang up on you if you do, because it's minus 20 where we are right now, which is about minus 13 Fahrenheit.
I cannot even fathom it being that cold right now. That is amazing. That's mind-blowing.
Okay,
wow.
Get 2 chairs, stack them one on top of another. Open your freezer, take your pants down, thrust yourself into the freezer, and then hold it there for about 5 minutes. That feeling is basically what we've been dealing with the last week.
No,
it's so late.
Most freezers are about -3. Your fridge is running at about 3 degrees. Your freezer is running at about -3 degrees. It's colder than the freezer.
Oh, okay, that's why I said you have to.
Alex is right. Mine says -4 right now, so that's not even going to work.
But on your nether regions, it feels colder. That's what I'm saying.
But it's March, guys. It shouldn't be that cold right now. That's amazing.
We're in Canada. We deal with igloos and hockey pucks. And we have to avoid polar bears on our way to school and work. So it's that and since it's Ottawa, the rogue politician trying to push an agenda. But that's neither here nor there.
But going back to the Alex being excited about me, I would find that very hard to believe. I'm humbled to be on this show. This has been an honor of mine to be even considered part of the Den of Lore crowd. So I appreciate it a lot. And Alex, I wish I could answer your questions better. I know that you have a lot of unfinished business and your mind you're fried right now. You're irritated that you weren't able to get your answers. I'm sorry about that, but my specialty is my specialty. I know my narrow niche, and I'm trying to expand it best I can every day. And I will be looking into those now.
We will chat again, Spencer.
I'll send him your contact information. He's not on Twitter. I am, but for whatever reason, Alex doesn't touch the Twitter account. Now, just while you're still on the air, ladies and gentlemen, next week's show, and actually I'm going to reset this scale filtering for crying out loud. This is what happens when you ask me to resize stuff, Alex. So there we go. So on next week's show, we've got let's see if I can. There we go. Richard Casaro, who is also a brother, and this is like our 5th brother we've had on the show, who's going to be talking about The Missing Link, and his new book that's out, and we're also going to be discussing about shared archaeology all across the world and how it speaks towards a civilization that is long forgotten but has left breadcrumbs for us to follow. I honestly I've been following this guy on Twitter for like a long time, and finally we became Facebook friends, and I've just been following his stuff pretty much nonstop. I can't wait to have him on the show.
If I was on Twitter, I would be #LiDAR the entire world.
Let's see if I can actually. Yeah, I worked like very long and hard. Let's see if I can actually resize this thing properly here.
Whoa, it's been a long day.
Oh, that was funny.
There we go. Okay, so I've resized it to the right to the right size. Cutting his picture out of his stock photography was, again, I'm glad I could get it onto a more apropos background for his subject matter. The god icon, obviously, if you're talking about anything like Quetzalcoatl, or sorry, help me out here. What's the other one? Quetzalcoatl. I always forget.
You're talking Mayan or
Mayan, Aztec. Anyway, so we're gonna have him on next week, starting at actually we're starting early. I think it's like about 6:30. We're gonna have the show because he is in Spain. So check us out, and obviously, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at info@denoflore.com. We're also still running the Denver Michaels sandwich. Send Denver Michaels a Sammich Contest. So again, if you have a sandwich recipe, send it to info@denoflore.com. We will get Denver, our cryptozoologist, to try it out, and we will have him review it on air. And if you are the best sandwich of the bunch until the end of May, you get 3 signed books from author Denver Michaels about cryptozoology. Spencer, how do people get a hold of you, and how do they get a hold of your class?
All you have to do is email me at author@pyramidfactory.net, and just, in the subject line, make sure that you are inquiring about the class. And if you're interested in following me on Twitter, please, it's Trinity Alchemy, but with the number 3 instead of TRI. And I'll be happy to answer any questions through email. And if you want to take the class, I'll be happy to have you.
That's absolutely fantastic. Now, I know that you have to put your kids to bed, so I am going to... we are going to thank you again very much for joining us on the program. Again, we hope that you sleep well in... how warm is it there?
How warm is it? It's 75 degrees right now.
Son of a gun. Okay, go enjoy the warm, the warm evening. And
we'll sleep with the windows open for you.
That's fantastic. And for all of the listeners out there, just 1 second here. For all the listeners out there, if you want to be able to call in quick, we'll do a quick 10-15 minute call-in session. 1-347-789-7977. That's 1-347-789-7977. Or just add Den of Lore to Skype, and we'll talk to some of the fans out there. All right, Spencer, have yourself a wonderful evening, and we will play the outro music for you. And this is, we'll go with Spellbound tonight.
Thank you, Chris and Alex.
You are welcome. So, was I letting Tyson out to use the washroom when you asked the monoatomic gold question?
Well, there was a lot of questions.
Well, what did I miss while I was doing that?
The entire episode was supposed to be about monoatomic gold. So.
Well, most of the episode, we didn't talk about it as far as how it was actually made.
Well, what would we do with that much monoatomic gold? How would people test for purity? We talked about the David Hudson method. We got that across. We're curious to know if any of our listeners know if somebody's picking up from Lawrence Gardner's work over, I believe he was in the UK. So if we have any UK listeners that are aware of Lawrence Gardner's passing, and if there's anybody that's following up on his research, I'm sure he's got lots of very interesting research. Maybe we could... I know I sent an email to them, but maybe there's some people in the UK we can get in touch with for that. We should find if there's anybody experimenting on the superconductive properties of those monoatomics at any universities. I'm sure there's one somewhere in the world that'd be willing to have a look at that, or is already looking at that. Those are all topics for upcoming episodes, I suppose.
Well, that's a fantastic recap. I like the idea that the Great Pyramid, even though I always have a healthy skepticism with every theory about what the pyramid could have been used for, whether it's a meditation machine, a power plant, what have you. But I like to hear it because it's I love to be able to hear these different points of view.
Well, how many different places can you weave philosophy, technology, science, alchemy, and consciousness all into one topic?
That's a very good question.
We could do a whole series on that notion, but...
Well, we should do an we should do an episode on that. But I know that we've got 2 other people who on the show in the coming weeks that have their own similar pyramid theories, and we had them mostly in chat tonight. And it's okay, well, the pyramid could be many things. And it could be one thing. I know that there are some people who think, no, this is my theory and that's it. But, to hear people who are that open-minded about the possibility of, doing different things is pretty wild. Now, I'm hoping that every single time I play that song, I always get hit with...
And you never delete it.
Well, it's a good song. I'm going to give Denver a call. I know that he's been online with us most of the night, so we'll see how he's doing before we end out the night. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Oh, jeez. Such a commanding voice. How are you doing, Denver Michaels?
Hey, man, how's it going?
Not too bad. How did you enjoy the show?
It's good. I mean, I was in and out because I had a little family drama I was dealing with. But, yeah, good show as always.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you in, and as one of our regular contributors, in addition to, kind of one of our endearing fans. It's like if Denver's not there, it's not really a show to a certain extent.
Oh shucks! You're making me blush.
Well, we love you, Denver. How has your week been? I know that you tried out. Grim actually left the chat possibly already, and I wanted to be able to get him in the chat while you gave a review of his sandwich if you had a chance to announce it or try it out yet.
Yeah, I did try it out actually. Yeah, it was a solid sandwich. Let's see here. Let me look at my notes. It was a salami Polish ham on a sliced Italian roll. Throw that in the oven with some sliced mozzarella and cheese till it's melted. Then some lettuce and vinegar and oil on top. So yeah, it was a decent sandwich.
Photo, or it didn't happen?
I didn't get to do a photo. Like this was a warm sandwich, so I thought that the cold sandwiches are a little easier to take a picture of in the field. So I didn't actually get this is the first one I did, so I guess the process will get better as we go along. But I didn't get a photo of this one. My apologies.
Now
I'm just teasing you, Denver.
Maybe I'm being too serious.
You ate it too fast. That's all.
Now we've got two Kevins in the chat still. I know Kevin Stevens, who is in the UK, and it's morning for him. And if he's drinking scotch and it's a Saturday, then Kevin Stevens, cheers to you, buddy. Thank you very much for all the music. Kevin DGAF 420 is saying hello. Now, interesting thing on a sandwich note, my mother is actually throwing in her recipe for tuna, and I'm going to email. I don't know if we didn't set any conditions on friends and family, and my mom, she's kind of her own entity, as it were, with regards to contests. So,
sure.
And I know she listens to the show. She's like, Chris, stop swearing so much. So I've stopped swearing.
I don't listen to her.
Oh, trust me, that was my 20s, and things went to hell until I started listening to her. So listen to your mother's beat, folks. And it's a she doesn't have exact measurements, as it were, but I'll send you the recipe, and it's you need some curry powder though, and you need some garlic powder. So you might want to track some of that down.
Yeah, give it to me, and then I can try it out.
Now, how is the editing for the new book released? I've pre-ordered my copy. Oh, and
cool.
it's actually 4:20 in the morning where Kevin Stevens is, and he's drinking red wine. Good man.
He's gonna have a rough day ahead of him.
Oh, he's a trooper. Good man.
Yeah, you got a soldier on.
Now, how your book is being released April 4th, or April 3rd, rather.
April 3rd, yeah. Monday, April 3rd, it's going to be released. And, I mean, if everything goes right and I get all the editing and everything done, I might release it a little early, but at this point, April 3rd is the day. So, yeah, probably all week long I've been working on editing, and this weekend I ordered a proof of the the paperback version, and sometimes with the editing, it's a little easier, when you're actually looking at a physical copy as opposed to something on your computer. So I've been kind of going through that this week, and it's going pretty well.
And for anybody who's listening at home, I know the first book was dealing with water monsters in North America. The second was dealing with water monsters in South America, and that was actually one of our first episodes, was you coming on to talk about that. Which
episode 4, I think.
Yeah, I think it was actually. It was right around the time, I think, before Alex came on board. No, I'm going to double check that while we're doing this.
No, it was the 3rd episode.
The 3rd episode.
And I sat in on the 2nd one.
Oh, there you go. And now this one is going back to North America, and you're dealing specifically with West Virginia cryptids such as Bigfoot or Slenderman, the Mothman. Now, one of the things we didn't necessarily touch on for any of the times we've ever talked to you is why did you finally decide to do stuff in your own backyard?
Well, West Virginia, I live about 20 minutes away from the West Virginia line, and all my life I've lived probably within an hour or less from West Virginia. And so, of course, I've always had an interest in the paranormal and that type of thing. And West Virginia just has a disproportionate amount of paranormal activity, cryptids, just a lot of weird things. And, this book, it was just something that I wanted to do because, the proximity and, in this book, I was kind of able to relate some personal anecdotes and some stories and things, and so I think it's going to be a fun book. I deal with some of the cryptids in West Virginia, but also talk about UFO sightings. I think I told you last week. I kind of briefly go into giants a little bit, and I do a little bit of history with the mound builders, some colonial history and Civil War history. So I think it's going to be a fun book for anybody that's into the paranormal or cryptozoology or just weird things in general.
Now, for giants, I know we've had Ross Hamilton on the show, and Ross is a good friend of the show. We went on with his. His talk on it was actually I think it was episode 9, and it was a full lecture on the mound builders, and the Star Mound and the Serpent builders for the Ohio Valley, and how those were astronomically aligned to Draco, and touched on it being like a focal point for energy and kind of as a rallying point for the coming feminine energy changeover, which is going from east to west, as it were. So like the next gonna say incoming era, as it were, of enlightenment is still going to be here in North America, but it's going to be based off of those native beliefs, which I thought was a very cool way of looking at it. Now, like, what are some of the things you found? Because I know giants and mound builders is always a good subject, and we never get to talk about it anywhere, ever. So, now that you're actually online and available, I'd love to get your opinion on it as a teaser for the book coming out April 3rd.
Yeah, well, as far as the mound builders and the mounds and giants and that sort of thing go, I mean, in my book, and I don't get the book is kind of maybe kind of a survey book. It just kind of briefly touches on a lot of things, and just kind of one of the theories that I offer up is West Virginia has or had over 400 burial mounds, and this is what we know of. I mean, who knows? What might be out in the woods on private property that's all grown over and everything. But at any rate, these mounds, a lot of them, as you were saying, and as Ross has indicated in his writings, had celestial alignments, and they're known to have had energies and so on around them. When I was doing some of my research, I would go to a lot of these mounds that are still intact, and just for shits and giggles, just walk around them with an EMF reader, and in one mound in Dunbar, West Virginia, I got a pretty big spike on I can't remember if it was the eastern side or the northern side of one of the mounds, and so at any rate, I just kind of theorized that a lot of these mounds and the energy, from the mounds might be a source for, some of the weird activity that you see. I mean, because let's face it, see, most of the mounds are totally, destroyed. They've been plowed over, planted over, and so on. But, the energy that was in those mounds doesn't go away just because the mounds are no longer there. So that's kind of a theory that I have, and I'm certainly not an expert on the topic, but I just believe that is a potential source for a lot of, weird things, so to speak.
That is kind of refreshing from a standpoint. A lot of people will say, like, oh, they were giants from Atlantis or what have you, and like you're taking a very scientific approach, and that's probably one of the reasons why we like having you on the show so much, is that you're a cryptozoologist researcher, but you're not the type of guy who's going to try and be all like, oh no, it was Bigfoot and he spoke to me through his mind.
No, I mean, I try, and in my book, I talk a lot about a lot of weird things, and I kind of bring it up, but at the same time, I don't necessarily believe in everything that I write about. You know what I'm saying? I kind of give it a forum, but at the same time, I like to try to stay grounded where possible. Put it this way, if there's a like for Mothman, you hear a lot of things. It was a tulpa. It was this. It was that. Yeah, it was an owl, whatever. But if there's a natural explanation, yeah, I try to go to that first, and then kind of work my way out from there. So yes, I believe in a lot of weird things, but I at the same time, there's a lot of nonsense out there. You know what I'm saying? So you really kind of have to be discerning.
Now, most importantly, and again, just to be able to kind of cap off the rest of the show, how do people pre-order your book?
Yeah, just go to Amazon right now. There's all I have for pre-order is a Kindle version. Unfortunately, for the paperback, it's just too much of a pain in the ass to try to set up a pre-order. But a Kindle version is up, and even if you don't have a Kindle device, you can download the free app on your smartphone or tablet, and it's available for 99 cents. And so for 99 cents, you've not got a lot invested in it. Even if it sucks, you're only out $1.
And again, that's 99 cents US, so it's like
US.
$15 Canadian.
I forget that you guys are to the north a little bit. But
oh God, it's like $15 Canadian, man. It's like, do I get the book or do I fill my gas tank?
Yeah, no, it's 99 cents American for the Kindle version pre-order, and of course, the price goes up, when the actual Kindle version comes out. But when, if anybody does want to hold out for a paperback, it will be available on or around the 3rd of April.
And this is why we're also pushing out the end of the Send Denver Michaels a Sammich Contest until the end of May.
Yeah.
Now, I know that Kevin Stevens, who's a longtime listener to the show, and Kevin, thank you very much for all of your support and love and attention. You're a good man, and I know at 4 o'clock in the morning it's hard to listen to the show, so trust me, I know what you're going through, and I appreciate your effort. He just sent a homemade jam and peanut butter sandwich recipe, even with the recipe for jam, apparently.
Wow.
So I've just sent you that. And whenever you get a chance to try that out, I will also send you the recipe for my mom's tuna fish sandwich, which again I grew up on that stuff, so I think it's good, but it's different for everyone else. And
okay, I'll try to get those this weekend.
So again, if there's anybody out there who has a sandwich recipe, again, whether it's just like take 2 pieces of like white bread, put some butter on it, and like put some cucumber and like just serve that as a sandwich. Send your sandwich recipe in. We will get Denver to try it out. Please do not send anything that will actually kill Denver. He does good work. He's got a family. Think of the kids. But, something that's good, something you grew up on. Send it in. If you are the top sandwich, I will send you 3 signed copies, paperback, of Denver Michaels' book. So you get the North American Water Monsters book, you get the South American Water Monsters book, and you get his brand new release, which is available on Kindle for $1 pre-order right now. and you will get those in May, or after May, once we close the contest. So you can send that recipe to info@denoflore.com, or send me a message over Twitter, or find me on Facebook at Chris George Zuger and send me a message that way. We need your sandwich recipes. Denver is out in the field a lot, and we need to make sure that he is well fed, and he has a bunch of nutrients to keep that West Virginian and Virginian weather out of his bones. So send your sandwich recipes in ASAP and get a chance at winning some cool shit. And yeah.
Awesome. And by the way, Grimsteak sandwich, I gave him a score of 8 out of 10.
Holy shit.
8 out of 10.
So I'm gonna send him in.
Yeah, I just looking through my notes here. He said that I just wanted to highlight this. He said in the message, unfortunately, I'm just a meat and cheese guy. I just wanted to address that real quick. I gave him half a point for that extra on his sandwich. You don't need to be ashamed to be a meat and cheese guy. I mean, everybody knows that vegetables are gross and that we only eat them because we need to make us healthy. So never apologize for being a meat and cheese guy.
That's that's fantastic. Yeah,
you know
that's
what
true.
I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying. Oh, definitely.
Everybody knows vegetables taste bad, and so we don't necessarily need, nobody needs to feel like they necessarily need to have vegetables on the sandwich. I just want to make that clear. If you're a meat and cheese guy, just send in your meat and cheese recipe.
Hell, I'm a red-blooded Croat. We eat smoked back bacon. Just cut that shit right off the slab with some cheese and some bread and some kielbasa. We're good to go.
That's how God ordained it.
Especially, yes, if you mix it with beer, you're good to go. Now, all right. Well, Denver, I know that you've got to head to bed. And I know you've been doing some dad stuff.
Yeah. My son skipped school today, so I had to kind of break from the show, and you can't drive for a couple days, that kind of thing. So.
How old's your son?
He'll be 18 in a couple months, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have to live by my rules.
That is true, and if any of his friends are listeners of the show, we can publicly shame him to make sure he never does it again. Set him straight now, because make sure he's an upstanding member of society in his father's eyes, and
yeah, we can't have any deadbeats in this house.
And if I could speak to your son for a moment, Junior. Speaking from a man who has spent his entire 20s wasting his life, trust me, my life would have been better if I listened to my parents. Listen to yours. They care about you. They love you. And for the love of God, you might give them gray hairs early. Like, nobody wants that. So just, straighten up, fly right, and shit'll get easy. Trust me.
You just got to do the right thing, and we'll get along,
Exactly. So, well, Denver, I'm going to play you the other outro music. This is our super special outro music. And this is Spellbound, and we're going to finish off the show, ladies and gentlemen, after this. So, Spellbound it is. This is... No, actually, I've already played Scattered Knowledge. Sorry, Coco's getting in the way of stuff. Can't see the screen. There we go. So there we go, Denver. Thank you very much. Have yourself a wonderful evening. Hopefully tomorrow morning is less stressful for you. Again, do what you need to do. We're always here for you if you need to chat or just vent. And I hope you have a wonderful, fantastic weekend.
All right, you too. Good night.
Good night, Denver. So that was the Den of Lore, episode 26. Alex, you have fun?
That was fun.
Now, did you get your questions answered for Monoatomic Gold?
There's always more rabbit holes to explore.
There's always... I know, oh man. With Richard on next week, I'm actually very interested to hear what he has to say, because it's been quite a while since I've actually looked into the similarities in architecture, just because from work or from organizing the show, my amount of reading on that aspect of archaeology is kind of a little bit lacking these days. So I'm quite excited.
I was just on the website there looking at the range of topics for the gentleman's website.
Cool.
It's going to be good.
Oh, did I tell you that we've got a Thursday show coming up at the end of the month?
I think you emailed me that today.
Now, I know that actually one of the guys was in here in the YouTube chat, and let's see here. It was Danny Kerr. Kerr, he's also a fellow Canadian. He's actually around the Niagara area. He has the Tesla Pyramid theory, and we're going to bring him on the 30th of March, as well as his partner Doug Keenan. And if you want to open up that box over there, that lovely box, Doug sent us a care package with some things to test. And between Doug and Danny, they've got Doug has the Big Sky theory, and he has a couple books out with a workbook, and the cycles of the pyramids. And he sent us a care package to test it out, because apparently there's some exercises you can do with it, and we're going to test those out. That's a lot of math in this book. Holy shit. So they've got a correlation between the two theories to discuss. So this is the first time they've been on the show, the both of them, and I'm actually quite excited for this. When somebody sends me a bunch of 3D printed pyramids and several books, I'm all on this shit like white on rice. So that's going to be the 30th of March. The 31st of March, we're going to have Scotty Roberts on for our opening segment, who's going to give us an update. I know Scotty, we called him tonight. We're hoping to get him on just as a little bit of an update to how he's doing. And then we are going to have NEXT from Music, Metaphysics, and Marketing Radio. It's a longer name for a radio station. I do apologize, I can't remember it off the top of my head. But NEXT is going to join us in to discuss the Gaia Project and what he's up to, and Magical Egypt in general. He's also a good friend of John Anthony West. So that is the rest of the month. And also, Stephen Myers is going to be on not next Friday, but the Friday after, to discuss his water pump theory and how the Great Pyramids were built using water. So that is the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm going to play Spellbound one more time, just as the actual outro music. And I am very thankful that I get to hang out with all of you every single Friday from all across the world. We get tons of tweets, tons of love. We heck, do this show for free. I think I've spent more on scotch in the last couple months, in the last year, than I have in the last 5 years before that, because it's so fun to drink while I'm doing this show. And you know what? We do it for you. If we ever start charging for any part of this show, I'm going to have to stop the show, because we do this for the shits and giggles of it.
You accept bottles on barter, though?
Well, that's the whole idea of the Patreon. The Patreon is to keep us in scotch so we can keep talking during the show.
And eventually fund an expedition.
Yes, or a movie. We'll see. I got some ideas. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, shout out to Kevin420. Thank you very much for saying it was an awesome show. It was an awesome show. Thank you to Spencer, as well as Denver, for coming on. We'll all see you next week, and I am just going to, again, reiterate the time. It is going to be an early show on Friday. No, it's not the 8:30 p.m. Next week's show starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 Central, 4:30 Mountain, and 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time. And we're going to be discussing History's Missing Link with all of you online. So check us out at denoflore.com if you want to check out the audio episodes. And don't forget to follow us, if you haven't already, at Den of Lore on Twitter and on Facebook. And that is all from Chris George Zuger. Have yourselves a wonderful night.